Be cool, be kind, be classy. A cupcake so sweet and sexy. Have fun and enjoy the journey. Just have a good attorney. No big whoop, no biggie. She lives near New York City. Not just a YouTube show. When you know, you better grab a straw. Learn about the law. It's cool here in the shade. Sipping motions of lemonade. Cool heads will prevail. Kindness will never fail. Be classy and vastly wise. Oh, Melanie Little is going live. Oh no, where is Melanie? Follow the island's melody. Is a concert within reach. No surprise, she's at Jones Beach. She heard some music far away. Captain Jack Stack Harbor Bay. He sings and his piano plays. Not all sounds are waterways. Speaking Yiddish and Latin, it's not just for Manhattan. It's for Goethe and Machegas. Ridiculous that insanus. Oy vey, Marcus. Proset, that's for schmucks. Be cool, be kind, be classy. My cupcakes sweet and sassy. Not just a YouTube show. When you know. Cool heads will prevail. Kindness will never fail. Be classy and vastly wise. Melanie Little is going live.
Hello, my friends. Hello, and happy hump day. Happy hump day. Thank you so much for coming to join me today, this Wednesday, October 30th of 2024. I was up all night. I was shooketh by what happened in court yesterday in the Delphi trial of Richard Allen, state of Indiana, versus Richard Allen. Shooketh. I started watching Andrea Burkhart's stream, and if you have not watched that stream from last night, and you have any doubt about the way that Richard Allen was treated in prison for the 13 months that he was confined to Westville, I urge you, I implore you, watch it. I think it was 5 hours. It may have been 6 hours. She was outraged. Andrea Burkhart was outraged. And the first show I did on this, I guess this is part 3 kind of what we're doing, going over the theories that are not going to be allowed in front of the jury. The first show that I did with you, we went over a previous show that I had done on Duty Ron's channel with Anthony from Tier Talk. And that was all the way back in June of 2023, when it was first revealed that Richard Allen had started making confessions, or made a confession, or maybe there was 6 confessions, and we didn't really know how they were made or to whom they were made or what they said. And, there's been a lot of secrecy shrouding this case. And, rightly so. I mean, there were photos that leaked that never should have leaked. Horrific crime scene photos of the children, of the girls, Abby and Libby. And as always, the focus needs to be on the victims and justice for Abby Williams and Liberty German, who were only 13 and 14 years old when they were brutally murdered on either February 13th or February 14th of 2017. I was so enthralled by what she had to say and her passion for human rights and human decency and the way defendants should be treated. She's a criminal defense attorney. I think she handles mostly appeals. And I hope that you guys are watching that for daily coverage. Lawyer Lee is also there. Bob Mata is also there. Everyone that's there is amazing. Lauren from Hidden True Crime is there. But Andrea's show last night, I was shooketh. And I had to write down something that she said, and I had to replay it so that I could get the exact quote. After court yesterday, which was Tuesday, October 29th, she said, "I have represented thousands of defendants, and I can count on one hand the number in I'm going to start again so that I get it right, because this deserves It's full power to be quoted. I have represented thousands of defendants, and I can count on one hand the number of monsters in human skin that I have encountered, some of them serious, violent criminals. I saw more monsters in that courtroom today than I ever saw in an orange jumpsuit, and they had badges. They had badges. The warden of Westville Prison testified yesterday. The way that she described his testimony was just like cold, callous disregard for human life and the treatment of prisoners. And I'm paraphrasing using my own words, so don't quote any of this to her. For those of you who don't know, Richard Allen was kept in Westville Correctional Facility, which is a state maximum security prison, for the first 13 months of his incarceration. He was not arrested until more than 5 years after the crimes. The crimes were in February of 2017. A few days after the murders, local law enforcement asked anyone who had been in the area of where the girls' bodies were found or around the Monon High Bridge trail to please come to them to give them information. Richard Allen willingly went down to the station and gave his information. It wasn't until some time later that an officer followed up with him and interviewed him in some parking lot of a dollar store or something nearby. And that tip kind of fell into a tip box, right? And in the meantime, what we're going to learn today that many of you know, because many of you have been following this from, oh, hi, Glare Raid. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming over, you guys. What many of you know, because you've been following this for a long time, or you're from the area, because a lot of this has been kept under wraps. There's been gag orders. There's been documents sealed. There's been so much stuff that the public doesn't know about. And now these documents are public. And I fell into the rabbit hole last night. Call me Alice, because I was in there for a long time. What the public may not know is that many other suspects were investigated before they wound up coming back, circling back to Richard Allen in October of 2022, calling him back in, interviewing or interrogating him twice. The videos of those interrogations were shown in court yesterday. Arresting him in October of 22. And from October of 22 until November of 23, Richard Allen was held in a maximum security prison in solitary confinement. He was in the hole for something like 6 months of that time period on suicide watch, despite the fact that he had never exhibited any signs of self-harm. It was learned early on during those interrogations, according to Andrea, that Richard Allen's trigger was his family. They started bringing in his wife and his daughter to that interrogation, and that's when his back went up. And he got angry. He's like, look, I came down here to tell you that I was there. And his story from his first interview was, I saw three girls. One of them looked like an older girl who was a babysitter. Two of them looked like they were younger and they were being babysat. He said that he was wearing a black Carhartt jacket, not a blue jacket. And after his second interrogation or interview, using the read technique, which is something Andrea also goes into in detail, which is a technique that is controversial, let's say, of interrogation. He was arrested and then he was thrown into the maximum correctional facility of Westville, where he was kept under suicide watch because the warden at the county jail said he couldn't protect him properly. This is a man who was not convicted of anything. That's not the way we do it here in the United States, my friends. People who are accused of crimes who cannot afford bail are kept in county lockups, county jails, not maximum security facilities, in the hole, on suicide watch, in an 8x12 cell with a toilet to the point where Richard Allen, prior to his confessions, it came out yesterday because some of the corrections officers also testified. In addition to that, what I can only imagine is horrific warden, because I was not there. I did not see his testimony. I'm telling you what I heard from our amazing fellow YouTubers and law tubers who are in the courtroom. He was filmed 24 hours a day. He was in a cell that was 8 by 12, which is basically the size of a parking space, in solitary. Andrea said at one point when she was talking about Richard Allen being in the hole for 13 months, she said, "This is nightmare fuel." Nightmare fuel. He was under constant observation with one of the corrections officers writing notes every 15 minutes for the entire time that he was there. She described the warden as having a reptilian smile. I mean, her descriptions were just right on. Like, I listened to her talk for 6 hours. Never once did she pull up anything on the screen. Never once did she show any video. It was literally her talking for nearly 6 hours, and it was riveting. She keeps copious notes. I don't know how she does it, but she has to do it on a pad and paper because there are no electronics allowed in the courtrooms, no phones allowed in the courtrooms. She has people who volunteer to stay and sleep overnight in line so that she can get into the courtroom, because there are only 24 seats available every day to the public. One second. And she's outraged, as she should be, as we all should be, because whether or not you think Richard Allen is the right guy, the way in which he was treated as a person who is accused of something that has not been convicted should horrify you. Because that could be you. That could be a member of your family. This is why I'm saying this is Karen Reed on steroids. This is Karen Reed on steroids because in Karen Reed, she was allowed to eventually use the third-party culprit theory in her trial. Karen Reed was out on bail the entire time. In Karen Reed's case, none of the third-party culprits were ever investigated. They weren't even investigated. Within 16 hours, they were going to pin it on the girl. They knew it was Karen Reed, or they wanted to pin it on Karen Reed. Proctor's text messages proved that. And eventually, third-party culprit stuff was allowed at her trial. In this case, it's not being allowed. The defense has made a motion to Judge Fran Gull, who apparently, from what I hear, makes Judge Bev look like, I don't know. I don't even know, a Girl Scout. I mean, I don't know. They've made a motion to renew that Frank's motion from September of 2023 to now see if they can start allowing some of this stuff in because of doors that may or may not have been opened. And then people are like, what about the confessions? What about the confessions? What about the confessions? What Andrea described last night on her show, these confessions, were they a result of psychosis, torture, medication? He was given injections of Haldol while he was in there. If anybody knows anything about Haldol and the side effects of Haldol and the things that can cause, hallucinations, psychosis. These confessions were made after it was noted in some of the notes by the corrections officers who were watching him 24/7, because that's the only human contact he had was from these corrections officers, some of whom may or may not have had Odin patches on their uniforms, which mysteriously disappeared one day after the defense attorneys started questioning some of the witnesses they were deposing about Odinism. After Richard Allen started eating his feces and smearing it all over his face. He banged his head, tapped his head, they like to say, against the wall of his cell for hours. But the corrections officers who testified said they didn't really think that was a big deal. They didn't really think that he needed medical attention or they needed to report that to anybody until, it became apparent that there were bruises all over his face. There was evidence, I think, at one point. I don't know if it was anybody testified about it yesterday, where he was eating his legal papers at one point. But the warden said, but he had a tablet. He could play Candy Crush on his tablet. We treated him better than the other 3,000 inmates that were in there. Because, he had a tablet. He had Candy Crush. It wasn't until November of 2023 that Richard Allen was finally moved to some place called Wabash, which I think is a county facility. You guys are always very collaborative, and so you can fill in some blanks that I may be missing or add your 2 cents. Or he lost right, Julie? He lost about at least 40 pounds. He had lost at least 40 pounds by the time I did that show that we replayed a portion of in June of 2023. So from October 22 to June 23, he had lost at least 40 pounds. The corrections officer who said that he was smearing feces on his face thought he was just doing it to get attention and then eating it, for attention. Tapping or, banging his head against the wall for attention. And then at one point he was putting a spork in his genitals. And when that didn't really work out for him, he put it in the other area. They broke him, Patty says. But why these sick monsters? Well, why is the public having to rely on people like Andrea, Lawyer Lee, Bob and Ali Mata, Lauren from Hidden True Crime, and I'm not sure what other YouTubers are in there? Because we can go on the air and we can talk for hours about this stuff, right? Local news channels only have, a 2-minute segment every night? Maybe some of them have a half an hour segment to do a wrap up of the week. It's horrific what happened to him, what continues to happen to him. And the court watchers that were in the courtroom, at least I watched Bob and I watched Andrea, were convinced that this was not the interrogation of a guilty man. These detailed confessions that he gave were really anything but. I killed the girls. I'm going to go to hell for it. Things like that. I encourage you to go watch Andrea or Bob to get the exact words of these confessions. But there was nothing. There was no bombs dropped of information that only the killer would know about. It's shocking, and it should shock you. It should shock you to the core. Every single person should be outraged by this. And he was assigned a suicide companion. That's what they called him. They kept him in sort of like what they call a suicide gown, which I think is kind of like a straitjacket. She said it, the best way she could describe it was like something out of like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Zero privacy. She said the lights are on 24 hours a day. There's no circadian rhythm. It's horrific. Kate, Melanie, not sure if you stayed until after midnight. Andrea saw your beautiful message at 12:15 and talked to you. Yes, I did. I did see it. I was awake. I was there. Such a painful night. Can't wait to see you together. Thank you, Kate. Thanks for watching that show. It's a show that everyone should watch. I can't recommend it even more highly. Good citizen. Thank you for your super chat, Kate. Good citizen. I wasn't sure how to get in touch with you, but I sent you a link under your last Instagram post with possible new corruption and sex scandals on teachers to follow in Suffolk County. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good citizen. My email is usually dropped it's fanbase at mlittlelaw.com. Instagram messages kind of get stuck in a black hole. So you can email me there. I'm sure one of the mods can drop it in the chat for you. I do read all emails. I don't get a chance to respond to them all. Thank you for that. Joseph Kane, thanks for becoming a new member. Thank you for your super sticker. Thank you to Tara and Boston for your very generous $20 super sticker and a $50 super sticker, Tara and Boston. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Stephanie, thanks for hanging out with me for 10 months. How do people do something about this, Melanie? Spread the word. Spread the word. Eyes need to be on this, right? In my opinion, more eyes need to be on this. This is a worldwide story now. A lot of people just wrote it off thinking that Richard Allen was guilty. No big whoop, nothing to see here, right? But there's so much more to this story. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go back to the original Frank's motion. Judge Gull has still not decided whether or not she's going to allow evidence of third-party culprits in. But it's important to talk about who these third-party culprits are and what the evidence against them is. And then use your own judgment, common sense. And tell me what you think. The judge has already ruled that these following items will not be allowed to be introduced at trial. Defendant's ability to introduce evidence of third-party culpability regarding the following individuals and or subject matter: Odinism, cult or ritualistic killing, Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, Johnny Messer, Elvis Fields, Ned Smith, Rod Abrams, Kagan Klein, Jerry Klein, and Ron Logan. These are all things and people that were not just theories. These are things and people that were investigated by the FBI. The FBI was taken off this case at some point. So let's go to the documents. Because I'm document based. I don't want you to think I'm just making this stuff up out of thin air, because I'm not. So many of you have written to me and you've shared your stories and you've sent me other information, things and stuff. So many people who were involved peripherally in this case have died or been killed or have been imprisoned. The FBI agent Ferency, who was assigned to this case, was killed by a former corrections officer in 2021 who's awaiting trial in federal court. It's wild. So buckle up, buttercups. Here's where we left off yesterday. I'm going to kind of skip around a little bit. So many people have been shut up in this case. It's not even funny. And scared and frightened. Judge Diener feared for his family. He recused himself from this case. Whether you believe the possibility of an Odin or ritualistic killing or not, do you think that it would be fair for the jury to hear about it and make the determination? Because quite frankly, it doesn't matter what you or I think. It doesn't matter what we think. The jury is the finder of fact here. And the jury needs to make that determination. But in order to make that determination, they need to be provided with all of the relevant information, in my opinion. According to Andrea, yesterday, when some of those corrections officers were testifying and or when those interrogation tapes were played, the videos, some of the jurors were rolling their eyes. So this goes back to the original Frank's motion, which gives us most detail of the motion that's recently been renewed. And the defense says the next, here's where we left off, the 12-page Odin report. So initial investigators were so interested in this potential theory because very close in time to the murders, within days, they had been contacted about the boyfriend of Abby's father, who had lots of things that were very suspicious on his Facebook page and other social media posts that were very similar to the way the bodies were posed, if you believe they were posed. That this person who started reporting to law enforcement had no idea about, because that was not made public. The condition of the bodies was not made public. The branches that were placed on top of the bodies that the state of Indiana wants the jury to believe were just randomly thrown there to conceal the bodies was not known. The way that the girls were murdered was not known. The way they were dressed or undressed was not known. And yet, immediately after this happened, law enforcement started receiving tips from people who found out or found these things on Brad Holder's social media, who was the father of Abby's boyfriend, who was a known Odinist, a random man from Arizona. No, I think he was from Georgia, because they went down. I think they went down to Georgia. Devil went down to Georgia. They went down to Georgia to meet with him because the prosecution didn't turn that information over to the defense. And so they went down to meet with him and got the information from him. So you don't need to hear it from me. Let's hear it from the court documents. And try and hold your questions, because it's hard for me to read the chat when I'm reading to you. So here's what you need to know about the 12-page Odin report. As part of discovery, the defense received a 12-page Word document that provided a summary of Trooper Kevin Murphy's investigation of the Odinite angle. He did have an alibi, but we're going to go through his alibi, and that's addressed. Thanks, Kim, because that's addressed in these papers. Over time, for reference purposes, the defense has come to call this document the Odin report. Therefore, to more clearly reference this document throughout the rest of the memo, the defense will use the moniker Odin report when discussing this report. The Odin report was created by Indiana State Trooper Kevin Murphy, who thankfully was independently curious. The Unified Command, through Liggett and Hammond, had concluded by March of 2017 that Brad Holder should be cleared as a suspect, as will be detailed later. That's 1 month post, not even 1 month post. Further, Unified Command had claimed that it had concluded very early on, probably March of 2017, that Odinites were not involved, as discussed earlier. Despite Liggett and Holman clearing Holder as a suspect in March of 2017, and despite a mystery Purdue professor dismissing all links between Odinism and the murders, Murphy pressed on. Murphy began investigating a man named Elvis Fields down in Rushville, Indiana, 126 miles away. The fruits from this investigation ultimately boomeranged Murphy, as well as law enforcement officers Greg Ferency and Todd Click, back to Brad Holder, and therefore back to Odinism. Let me break for a moment to tell you what happened to Greg Ferency. If you didn't watch yesterday, I'm going to tell you again. Back in It's not the right article. I'd rather just put the article up than put a video up, so let me do that for you. The man who killed Greg Ferency had once run for mayor. Like, you can't make this up. You just can't. Here's the article from July 9th of 2021. From a candidate for Terre Haute mayor to murder suspect, federal officials identify Ferency's accused killer. The United States Department of Justice has identified the man they say killed Terre Haute Police Department Detective Greg Ferency. That man was identified as 44-year-old Shane Meehan. Along with his role at the Terre Haute Police Department, Ferency worked as an FBI task force officer, specifically on the Delphi investigation. It doesn't say that, but here it is. Officials confirmed with News 10, Meehan ran for mayor in Terre Haute in the last mayoral election. The Federal Bureau of Prisons confirmed to News 10 that he used to work at the Federal Correctional Complex in Terre Haute. He worked there from March 20th of 2005 to October 28th of 2017. He was a correctional officer. Remember, the girls were killed in February of 2017. This killer, who killed Ferency, who was heavily involved in this investigation, was a correctional officer at the time Abby and Libby were murdered. Here's what officials say happened. According to court documents, on Wednesday, Meehan drove his truck to the gate of the FBI resident agency building near the Vigo County Courthouse. They said Meehan got out of the truck and tossed a Molotov cocktail toward the building. A short time later, Detective Ferency walked out of the office where Meehan allegedly confronted him. Meehan is accused of shooting Ferency. Ferency returned fire but did not survive his injuries. An FBI special agent came out of the building and got into a shootout with Meehan. Officials say Meehan was shot twice before he got into his truck and took off. A short time later, Meehan was found at Terre Haute Regional Hospital where he received treatments for his gunshot wounds. Officials said a gun, Molotov cocktails, and more ammo were found inside of his truck in the parking lot at Regional. Meehan was charged with the murder of a federal agent. If he's convicted, he could face life in federal prison. The FBI is heading the shooting investigation. And there he is, Shane Meehan. To my knowledge, he still has not gone to trial yet. So he murders Ferency in July of 2021. Richard Allen is not even arrested until October of 2022. What say you? Rassler's mom, feel free to share it out. Feel free to share the stream out if you think more people should hear about this or see it. A lot of people decided, right away, Richard Allen's the guy, Richard Allen's the guy, Richard Allen's guilty. These are alternative theories, alternative suspects that just weren't pulled out of thin air by the defense. They were actually investigated by the FBI. Todd Click. Let's talk about Todd Click for a minute. Another one of the law enforcement officers who was following this theory. Let's talk about Todd Click. What happened to Todd Click? Anybody know? A week before the trial started. Watch this.
An expert for the defense in the Delphi murders case has been arrested on charges of official misconduct. Court records show that Todd Click was in court today in Ripley County. The charges stem from when Click worked for the Department of Child Services earlier this year. Prosecutors say Click falsified entries into DCS's case management system and forged the signatures of parents or caregivers on DCS forms. Click has been doing work for attorneys for the Delphi murder suspect, Richard Allen. Click had previously testified about possible ties between the ancient religion Odinism and the deaths of Libby German and Abby Williams. Richard Allen's trial is scheduled to begin 1 week from today.
Wow. Anybody know if he's still in jail? So they arrest him on charges having to do with credibility, right? He was working for the defense firm, apparently, according to that news piece. To what? Destroy his credibility in case he's called as a witness by the defense at trial? Hmm? How crazy. How convenient. Take him out so he can't testify. Destroys credibility ahead of the trial. It was a week ago, literally. That happened early October. I don't know. Does it make you go, hmm? Back to the document. Murphy, Ferency, and Todd Click's dogged pursuit of the truth is what we citizens and those accused of crimes should expect out of law enforcement. These honorable law enforcement officers were knocking on doors and conducting interviews, going wherever the evidence led them. Immediately following an interview, Murphy would reduce key aspects of that interview into a Word document. Over time, the Odin report grew from a single page from his first interview with Mary Jacobs to 12 pages, with the last pages used for summing up his thoughts from all the interviews he had concluded. That's amazing police work. The defense has attached this document to this memorandum and marked it as Exhibit 36. Surprisingly to Murphy, even though he was handing over to Unified Command powerful evidence that really painted a clear picture of who was involved in the murders, Holman and Liggett did not seem interested. Eventually, Murphy said that the United Command phased out the Odinite/Rush County angle. These footnotes are referring to Murphy's deposition. Murphy, figured that this phasing out was due to Unified Command knowing things that he didn't know. That eliminated the Odinism angle. Murphy further stated, I kind of took my marching orders and just did what I was told and went where I was needed. In other words, Murphy trusted that Unified Command was doing the right thing. And here's where the defense says to the judge, the defense would encourage the court to stop and review this document before continuing to read this memorandum, as the Odin report will be discussed over the next several pages. I don't have a copy of the Odin report. I don't know that these exhibits have been released to the public. Who is Brad Holder? Who is Patrick Westfall? Who is Johnny Messer? Who is Elvis Fields? Who is Rod Abrams? And why does the evidence strongly point towards these men as having been involved in the murder of Abby and Libby? The Odin report provides much of the information. However, the report is not the only source of evidence provided by the state of Indiana that links these men to the murders. The investigated fingerprints of Todd Click and the late Greg Ferency are prominently peppered throughout the Odin report as well. Click also prepared a roughly 85-page report and delivered it to Unified Command. However, the defense didn't receive this document until September 8th of 2023, nearly 10 months after defense counsel entered their appearance. So it's important to note that shortly after receiving this document is when defense filed this Franks motion originally. The defense will now show what Liggett and the rest of Unified Command knew but refused to act on. This information is also what Liggett concealed from Judge Diener. The defense will include the evidence that links these men to the crime scene and to each other, including the intimate knowledge that these men had of the crime scene that only someone who had been at the crime scene would know. Next section, Brad Holder's connection to the crime scene. Brad Holder's son, Logan Holder, was dating Abby Williams at the time of the murders. Nobody denies this fact. So Abby was 13. I don't know. It's like, do you have a boyfriend when you're 13? Somebody said that Logan was 18. Anybody know? Who, Michael, I saw your very generous super chat last night to Andrea for filing fees in the action. That was amazing. Whatever you think about all this, the defense is entitled to see what the jury thinks about it. That's what I'm saying. Like, is Richard Allen entitled to a fair trial? Is the jury entitled to know all of the information that law enforcement knew about and pursued? I say yes. But the judge so far doesn't think so. Anybody know? He was 18, Logan was 18. Yeah, Reva, Judge Gull is sustaining every objection the state makes. Valid questions, though. Yeah, questions that go to credibility. The credibility of every single witness is always at issue. Always. I not being there, I can't really comment on it too much other than to just tell you what I've heard from people who are from people who are in the courtroom. Amber Holder, for example, discusses this fact on page 9 of the Odin report. Exhibit 37 is a document memorializing the only known interview of Brad Holder concerning the Delphi murders, at least through August 30th of 2023. In that document, it is learned Brad Holder details that he was usually in Delphi every weekend, visiting his friend Patrick Westfall and attending Asatru religious ceremonies at Patrick Westfall's house, usually on Sundays. Asatru is interchangeable with Odinism. Footnote 66. In a report labeled "Didn't Number This," Patrick Westfall described to law enforcement that Asatru was a warrior-type religion with many gods, including Odin and Thor. This report is marked as Exhibit 39. Patrick Westfall and Brad Holder had been friends prior to the murders of Abby and Libby. In fact, Patrick Westfall and Brad Holder were found in a photograph together as late as January 21 of 2017. Find attached a copy of said photograph marked as Exhibit 38. Murphy noted on page 11 of the Odin report that Westfall appears 10 times in pictures that Holder posts on Facebook prior to February 13th of 2017. However, after February 13th of 2017, Westfall does not appear in any of Holder's posed photos. What happened to the friendship of Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall? Amber Holder tells a very disturbing story. As can be viewed on page 9 of the Odin report, Amber told law enforcement the following. Amber said that Brad spoke of Patrick one time when he was intoxicated and said that he and Patrick got into a fight and they no longer speak to each other. He told her that he and Westfall were in the woods near a river conducting a ritual. One of them said or did something that the other did not agree with, and they no longer talked to each other. She said the river was near Patrick's house. Note, Brad has a Facebook post with him and Patrick together on January 21st of 2017. Patrick Westfall was living in Delphi at Blank Street in Delphi at the time. This document, they filed a confidential document that says this document is the narrative report of what is believed to be the only interview police conducted of Patrick Westphal. 67. Footnote 67. Just like Holder's videotaped interview, as of the date of the filing of this memorandum, the prosecutor still has not turned over Westphal's videotaped interview. The defense only has a narrative that allegedly memorializes Westphal's interview. The defense has requested both Holder's and Westphal's videotaped interviews. It's worth pointing out that this is after Richard Allen has been held in solitary confinement in a maximum security prison under suicide watch for almost a year. The address where Westphal was living at the time was 3.1 miles, or roughly a 7-minute drive to the cemetery, which is the closest entry point to where the girls were murdered. 68. Find attached a copy of Google Maps showing pins dropped at Westphal's address and close to where the girls were found, marked as Exhibit 40 and filed as confidential. As we know from Exhibit 37, Brad Holder admitted that he spent every weekend hanging out with his friend Patrick Westphal in Delphi and participated in Asatru religious ceremonies on Sunday with Patrick Westphal. The girls were abducted on Monday, February 13th of 2017. Patrick Westphal appeared to no longer be friends with Brad Holder after February 13th of 2017. Defense is unaware as to whether law enforcement were even mildly curious enough to seek Brad Holder or Patrick Westphal out to ask them about the explosive information Amber told police about an argument over a ritual gone bad in the woods sometime in February 2017. Additionally, Richard Allen's defense team is unaware whether law enforcement sought a search warrant for Brad Holder's or Patrick's homes. Amber Holder tells a second and equally disturbing story. When interviewed a second time, Amber discussed another conversation she had with Brad Holder. She had gone to Brad Holder's house to visit him. While the children were upstairs, Amber inquired about Patrick Westphal under the ruse that Amber's girlfriend had a date with Patrick. This is what is contained on page 10 of the Odin report. Brad became very nervous and told her that she needed to stay away from Westphal or she would end up dead. She said that Brad told her Westphal and, quote, his crew was responsible for the murders of the girls in Delphi and a fire that killed 2 girls. There are 2 fires, which we can talk about. One of them is the Flora fire that somebody brought to my attention. And another fire in which, and you can't make this up, I believe she was a state trooper who did the polygraph test of Elvis Fields' sister, and her daughter were killed. And her husband was a judge, or is a judge. Back to the doc. I asked her if she knew of the fires in Flora that killed 4 girls, and she said she was not familiar with any fires that killed any children until Brad mentioned it today. She said Brad may have been talking about that fire, but had the number of killed wrong. She said Brad told her that Westphal and his crew had friends in several states and that they have no problem killing, quote, race traders. I asked her to clarify race traders, and she said she believed it meant white people who mix with other races. Amber said that Brad told her that Westphal belonged to a group called the Vinlanders and 22. Brad told her that Westphal had many people backing him up, and powerful friends, she said that Brad was very nervous while telling her these things and was whispering like he was fearful someone else would hear him. She said that throughout the conversation, Brad was constantly telling her to stay away from Westphal. He also told her that Patrick had killed a lot of people and it didn't matter if they were innocent or not. Amber truly believes Brad is scared of Westfall. Prior to Amber leaving, she said that Brad told her to stay off Westfall's radar and, quote, "I can only protect you so much if you keep asking questions." He also told her that if Westfall found out she was married to him, that she would be in danger. Brad also questioned her on why Westfall would be going on a date, that he was under the impression that Westfall was married or engaged to someone. Let's break for a minute to look up Vinlanders. I'm telling you, I fell into the rabbit hole. I fell into it. It's deep. This is according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, and they are a very reputable organization. Anybody know about the Vinlanders Social Club? According to the Southern Poverty Law Center's article, the Vinlanders Social Club was formed in 2003 by a handful of former members and associates of a rogue, racist skinhead group, the Outlaw Hammerskins. Publicly, the Vinlanders appeared to be a coalition of independent state skinhead crews, but in reality, the group functioned as a single entity. The Vinlanders relished a reputation for drinking, brawling, and following a racist version of Odinism, a form of ancient paganism once practiced by Vikings. In its own words, quote, "Our beliefs stem from being deprived of our individual freedoms and from our witnessing of the decline of Western civilization. One of the most obvious and sometimes relevant symptoms of this decline is forced integration and the decline of our towns and neighborhoods based on racial makeup." That's a quote from the co-founder, Brian, Brien James, on the group's website in 2007. Here's a little picture of him on the left here from Indianapolis. He's also quoted as saying, "We will die fighting together for self-determination and self-respect in a world that has turned its back on natural law and common sense." This is happening in our country, Kiki Kazoo. Right there in Indianapolis. Yeah, it's a hate group. Exactly so. Another quote of Brian James, "As an organization and a tribe, we will do what we have always done. We will thwart and displace those who want to harm us and protect and better those who support us." Co-founder Eric Fairburn, in a message board post directed at rival Hammerskin Nation in 2003, wrote, "I'm ready for Valhalla or prison to do what is right. We are sick of the lies, tired of the BS. We are calling you out. Either listen to the truth or fight for your lives for the lie." Background: Brian James, Eric the Butcher Fairburn, Byron Widner, Nate Slider, and Donald Weinrich were no strangers to the racist skinhead scene when they formed the Vinlanders Social Club in 2003. James Widner and Slider had been members of a skinhead faction called the Outlaw Hammerskins, and Fairburn and Weinrich were hangarounds or associates of the group before starting in 2002 the Hoosier State Skinheads, a group that operated out of Indiana and Illinois. They recruited members in Ohio to start a neighboring faction, the Ohio State Skinheads. Though outwardly it appeared the two groups were separate, in reality they functioned as a single organization. As more crews were created, they all became part of what came to be known as the Vinlanders Social Club. According to a statement by James posted on the Vinlanders website in 2007, the group was created because We were disappointed with the movement that we dedicated our young lives to. James wrote that the Vinlanders was to be something that was going to replace and surpass the old guard in the skinhead scene, even by force if necessary. The Vinlanders was formed in large part as a direct challenge to Hammerskin Nation, a coalition of Hammerskin crews that had dominated the racist skinhead scene for more than a decade. The schism between the Hammerskins and Vinlanders was evident in October 2005 when a meeting of the National Skinhead Council was held on the Ohio property of a Blood and Honor / C18 member. Blood and Honor and C18, short for Combat 18, are affiliated racist skinhead groups that split off from Blood and Honor worldwide in England. The Vinlanders aligned themselves with the American spin-offs, while Hammerskin Nation supported Blood and Honor worldwide. More than a dozen white supremacist groups, mostly skinhead crews, but also the Imperial Clans of America, IKA, and the Neo-Nazi National Alliance were in attendance, and by the close of business, the coalition decided to call itself Council 28. 2 standing for B, representing blood, and 8 for H, meaning honor. Conspicuously absent were any Hammerskins and groups associated with them, such as the Portland, Oregon-based skinhead group Volksfront. And then goes on a little while to give a little more history into this group or movement. By 2007, the Vinlanders had 8 chapters in 6 states. Their affiliated skinhead crews began using the Vinlander name, so the Florida State Skins, for example, became the Florida Vinlanders. But a violent encounter in downtown Indianapolis in March of 2007 between Fairburn fellow Vinlanders Tim Dumas and Josh Kernan, an African-American man, signaled a reversal in the group's fortunes. Goes on to describe the altercation. At some point in this article or this webpage, talks about how it's infiltrated prisons. Jadzia says delaying his trial because he was a hitman. Talking about Minion, who killed Ferency. Thanks, Jadzia. Hi, Kay. Thank you so much for the super chat. I just found your channel and I will stay here for longer. Thank you for having an open mind. Thank you for tuning in. We're happy to have you. Everyone say hi to Kay. Liz Reed. Hi, Liz Reed. Thank you as always for covering this, Melanie. Thank you, Liz, so much for tuning in. Piney Woods Law and Crime. Thanks for the 5. I'm just exhausted and disgusted by the new rise of white supremacy. And I think it's important to point out that not all Odinists are white supremacists, right? Not all people who believe in pagan beliefs or religions are also white supremacists. This is a faction, a spinoff, if you will. Maybe. Back to the document. Imagine being an investigator trying to solve a horrible murder, having learned all this information. What would a good investigator do? What would good leadership in the form of uniformed command do with this information? We would ask the court to think about all the tools that law enforcement had in its arsenal to pursue an investigation once these explosive stories were told. It doesn't appear that Unified Command did anything. The question then may be, did they, including Liggett, want to do anything to investigate the Odinites? Was Uniform Command and Tony Liggett, a member of the Unified Command, acting intentionally or recklessly in the way it conducted the investigation? And by extension, was Liggett acting intentionally or recklessly in concealing this information from Diener in his affidavit for a search warrant? What else linked Holder to the crime? On April 7th of 2017, Holder posted a photo of a hand marked with the exact rune found on Abby's body. Attached and marked as Exhibit 41 is a Facebook post that displays Brad Holder's hand. I'm going to pull it up for you. Never fear, I bring the receipts. The photo displayed Brad Holder showing off a rune that was inked onto his hand, not a tattoo, but likely from an ink pen. This rune that Brad Holder is proudly showing off is the same rune that the killers laid on Abby's body using sticks or branches. This image was posted by Brad Holder approximately 52 days after the murders. The public had no idea what the crime scene looked like and that Abby had sticks placed on her body like a Hagal rune. Yet Brad Holder coincidentally was showing off the same rune that was found on Abby. That should be important information for curious, honest, and well-intentioned law enforcement officers. Honest Trooper Murphy admitted that the image of the rune drawn on Holder's hand was similar in appearance to the rune found on Abby's body. Footnote 69, according to Murphy's deposition. Find attached a side-by-side image of the rune that Brad Holder drew on his hand next to Abby's crime scene photograph marked as Exhibit 42 and filed as confidential. Trooper Holman, on the other hand, refused to admit that the two images on Exhibit 42 looked similar. I mean, it's a stretch that you could say that. That's the exact same formation, is what Holman said when comparing the two. By admitting that these images match or look like each other, Holman would then have to be admitting that Holder should have been a suspect because the rune on Holder's hand matched the rune found on Abby's body when the details of the crime scene were not known to the public. This is why honest cop Murphy admitted the obvious, that the two images look alike, but Holman refuses to admit the obvious. Holman has hitched his wagon to Richard Allen's guilt and can't consider any other candidate, and certainly cannot concede that Unified Command's investigation has been a shameful embarrassment. Therefore, Holman has to continue this charade of proclaiming that the two images contained in Exhibit 42 don't look similar, whether he actually believes it or not. Let's take a look at that picture that Holman posted on his Facebook. And there it is. That was posted on his Facebook, April 7th of 2017. And Holden points out the two runes together supposedly would read Hail Odin. That's what my research revealed as well. Because apparently the hanged man, tarot, represents Odin, right? One of the girls was posed like the hanged man tarot, right? Card. There's that. Holman has hitched his wagon to Richard Allen's guilt and can't consider any other candidate, and certainly cannot concede that the Unified Command's investigation has been a shameful embarrassment. Therefore, Holman has to continue the charade of proclaiming that the two images contained don't look similar, whether he actually believes it or not. I reread that. However, while Holman cannot admit that the two images on Exhibit 42 look like one another, Holman is the same person that claimed that only minor differences exist between Sketch 1 and Sketch 2 of the suspects. As you will learn later in the memorandum, Sarah Carbaugh claims to have observed a man walking down the road with mud on his clothing around 3:57 p.m. on the day of the murders. The man she observed turned into Sketch 1. According to Holman, Sketch 1 is the killer, Richard Allen, according to his deposition. You will also learn that later in the memorandum that Betsy Blair observed a man on the High Bridge around 2 p.m. The man she observed turned into Sketch 2. According to Holman, this man is also the killer, Richard Allen. I'm going to assume that everyone has seen Sketch 1 and Sketch 2. But if not, I'll find them. Later, you will learn that Liggett's and Holman's timeline, in order for Liggett's and Holman's timeline to work, Sketch 1 and Sketch 2 need to represent the exact same person, Richard Allen. Sketch 1 is attached as Exhibit 105. Sketch 2 is attached as another exhibit. We would ask you, Judge, to take those exhibits out and to please look at them. Those two exhibits, according to Holman, are the same person, Richard Allen, and they need to be the same person in order to support Holman's timeline. Yet Holman will not admit the obvious that the men represented in these sketches look nothing like each other, nor like Richard Allen. Needing them to be the same man, Holman testified under oath that only minor differences exist between Sketch 1 and Sketch 2. This is how entrenched Holman is in his position that Richard Allen is guilty. He can't even admit the obvious. To further demonstrate the ridiculousness of Holman's alleged belief that except for minor differences, Sketch 1 and Sketch 2 look alike, let's look at what Toby Lazenby said about Sketch 1 and Sketch 2. In his sworn statement, Toby Lazenby said that Sketch 1 and Sketch 2 are in fact two different men. That was according to Lazenby's deposition. While Richard Allen sits in a prison waiting for full disclosure of all evidence in the state's possession, the current sheriff and former sheriff can't even keep their stories straight as to how many men were involved and whether Sketch 1 and Sketch 2 represent the same man, Richard Allen, as Holman claims, or two different men, Richard Allen and someone else, as Lazenby claims. While Holman will not agree that Brad Holder's Facebook had hand-runed resembles the stick formation found on Abby's body, because this promotes Brad Holder as a suspect. At the same time, Holman will tell you that Sketch 1 and Sketch 2 look alike with only minor differences, because that promotes Richard Allen as the suspect. And they're going to just discuss even further how ridiculous they think it is that Sketch 1 and Sketch 2 are the same person, when even former Sheriff Toby Lazenby thought they were two different people. The fact that Holman refuses under oath to admit the obvious truth should provide insight into whether Holman and his fellow Unified Command member, Tony Liggett, acted intentionally in concealing information from Judge Diener. Next section, Trooper Purdy and Trooper Winters were aware of an eerie image on Brad Holder's Facebook page of what appeared to be a faked murder scene mimicking Abby and Libby's murder scene. When Trooper Purdy learned from Becky Patty that Brad Holder was an Odinist, at least for a short period of time, he was curious about Brad Holder. This short-term curiosity led to Purdy looking into Brad's Facebook page, where Purdy found a very eerie photograph. I do not have a copy of that photograph. That is Exhibit 74. Purdy discusses how he had viewed this image on Holder's Facebook page. It shows two young girls lying on what appears to be the ground of a forest. The girls either are dead or are posed as if they were dead. The girls have tree limbs arranged over their bodies. The girl in the forefront of the photograph has her left arm and hand positioned very similarly to that of Abby's left arm and hand, outstretched above her head. The defense has prepared a side-by-side photograph of the mimicked photograph compared with the crime scene photograph of Libby, which is also marked as Exhibit 44 and filed as confidential. Although both girls are dressed and the limbs of the girls are not arranged exactly like the limbs and sticks on Abby and Libby, the similarity of that photo found on Brad Holder's Facebook page is pronounced. Purdy did not think much of this photograph in terms of it implicating Brad Holder. At least that is what he's now claiming in 2023. 75. Footnote 75. Purdy talks about the mimicked murder scene as just one piece of a puzzle. Because the image had been on Holder's Facebook page for as long as 4 or 5 years, it somewhat depressed the level of Winter's interest in this photograph. Stays on the case, hypothesizing Brad Holder has friends in high places, obviously. Just like Bohemian Grove, it's always the elite. However, even before Purdy had found that disturbing image on Holder's Facebook page, a tipster had beat him to the punch by finding it much, much earlier. The contents of a February 16th, 2017 tip was written up in a report. This was 2 days after the girls' bodies were found. This tip said the following. Quote, father of Logan Holder, ex-boyfriend of Libby, social media shows him a member of Vinlanders. Was it Libby's boyfriend or Abby's boyfriend? Now I'm confused. I thought I said it was Abby's boyfriend. In any event, this is what the tip said. Logan Holder, ex-boyfriend of Libby's social media, shows him a member of Vinlanders, which we just read about, posts of half-dead women and fascination with Gothic figures and symbols out of tree branches. This report shows that Liggett actually approved further investigation of Brad Holder based upon that tip. The tip says ex-boyfriend. Yeah, and it was Abby's. I guess a mistake, right? This is how the tip came in, though. So they're quoting the tip. Thanks. Perfect. This very same disturbing image came to the attention of law enforcement by a third time by way of a gentleman named Ryan Bucher from Georgia. This tip was received by Trooper Joseph Winters on April 12th of 2017. Well, it's about 2 months after the murders, and converted into a report. An unredacted copy of this report is attached and marked as Exhibit 46 and marked as confidential. The defense will hereinafter refer to this report as the Winters Report. Ryan Bucher has also signed an affidavit detailing his failed attempts to gain the interest of Carroll County law enforcement concerning the information that Bucher discovered on Holder's social media accounts. These are the things that armchair detectives often can tip off law enforcement about, and in this case actually did. One sec. Boucher's affidavit also details other aspects of the case discussed in this memorandum. As the affidavit details, Bucher talked directly to then Sheriff Toby Lazenby about Boucher's findings. This conversation would have occurred sometime before Boucher's April 12th of 2017 conversation with Trooper Winters. 77. We have not viewed any report in which Lazenby memorializes this conversation with Bucher, although it theoretically might have been found in the state of Indiana's most recent September 8th, 2023 evidence dump. Lazenby told Bucher that Holder was not a suspect and quickly dispensed of the phone call as detailed in Boucher's affidavit. Despite Lazenby's comments, essentially telling Bucher that Holder had been eliminated as a suspect, Bucher was undeterred. Bucher felt something was off and called the state police post. As detailed in the Winters report, once Bucher provided his ID, Bucher then provided Winters pictures from Holder's social media account depicting tree limbs on the ground displaying runes consistent with the Odin belief system. Then Winters wrote in the report that the provided media pictures show unknown young girls believed to be deceased with sticks placed over their bodies. The sticks across the females on Holder's media were believed to be symbols or runes. It should be noted that law enforcement has to this day still failed to turn over this mimicked murder photograph found on Holder's Facebook page. Fortunately, defense counsel was able to find Winters' report in the sea of evidence, and upon reading it, understood the potential importance that this photograph may have in terms of Holder's culpability in the murders. The only problem is that law enforcement had failed to produce it to the defense. Fortunately, through due diligence, the defense team located Bucher, drove to Georgia, and met with Bucher, who then was willing to provide the images to Richard's defense team and did in fact turn those images over to Richard Allen's defense team. Even as recently as his August 23, 2023 deposition, Winters stated that he was still unable to locate the images referenced in the Winters report that Bucher had provided Winters back on April 12th of 2017. A lot of missing evidence. It's according to Winters' deposition. This means that if the defense team had not traveled to Georgia, the defense would still not be in possession of this exculpatory piece of evidence and also would not have been able to ask questions at depositions to law enforcement concerning those images. To this very day, the state of Indiana has yet to turn over the images that Bucher provided Winters back in 2017. Again, this was written in September of 2023. I don't know if they've turned it over since. Following his interaction with Bucher, as can be read in Winters' report, it was apparent that Trooper Winters' interest was piqued. The details surrounding the February 14, 2017 crime scene was a well-guarded secret hidden from the public. Yet somehow, Brad Holder, an Odinite whose son dated Abby Williams, had one, an image on his Facebook page that closely resembled the crime scene, and two, appeared to have used an ink pen to draw a rune on his hand that mimicked the very rune that was found on Abby. Both images are described in Winters' report. So, what did Winters do once he realized that it appeared that Abby's boyfriend's dad, Brad Holder, appeared to know intimate details about a crime scene kept confidential from the public? He spoke with Jerry Holman. The information that Winters unearthed via Ryan Bucher was so impactful on Winters that Winters, remembers talking with Jerry Holman of Unified Command. Footnote 79. Footnotes 79 through 82 all refer to either Winters' deposition or his report. Winters even recorded the following in his report. I spoke with F. Sergeant Holman on April 12, 2017. F. Sergeant Holman advised that FBI had interviewed Holder shortly at the beginning of the investigation. In his deposition, Winters provided his reasoning. Yeah, I think there's some substantial things that need to follow up on. In the same deposition, Winters also said that he wanted to make sure that all the information I had captured in my time frame. Winters also said that he, quote, wanted to make sure that all the information I had captured in my time from that was passed on. And because I had just taken that information, I just wanted to make sure if I had no contact with anybody involved with this case again, they were aware that I generated this supplement. Imagine, supplemental report. Yes, Lisa, we're aware. We're aware of that. He confessed in May of 2023 after being held in solitary confinement in a prison on suicide watch after eating his own feces, banging his head against the wall so much that it resulted in serious injuries, sticking a spork into his genitals, and being perhaps induced into a psychosis, also being forced to take shots of Haldol So these confessions that were talked about in court yesterday, the question that many people and the jury who were rolling their eyes during this testimony may be considering, were these confessions real, genuine, or were they coerced, threatened? Was his family threatened? Was it a result of psychosis? Lisa, I would suggest, perhaps, if you haven't watched it, watch Andrea Burkhart's stream from last night. She's an attorney who's in court every day, and she will describe in painstaking detail everything that was revealed in court yesterday. There are many such things as false confessions. They can be true. So just pointing it out. Kind of like Karen Reed saying, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Which actually didn't happen. She said, did I hit him? Could I hit him? Under extreme circumstances, to say the very least. The first 2 interrogations that he did before his arrest and throwing him into a prison, he denied it. Said he had a black jacket on. Said he saw 3 girls on the bridge or at the location. So I have questions. We're looking into the questions. We're looking into the potential third-party suspects who the jury will hear nothing about unless Gull changes her ruling. Where was I? However, on September 8th of 2023, Rick's defense team learned something very interesting. On about September 4th of 2023, Trooper Holman finally followed up on Winter's request by finally re-interviewing Holder. It only took 5+ years. The defense still has not received Holder's first interview from February 17th of 2017. We will see how long it takes for the state to turn over Holder's second interview from September 4th of 2023. Does anybody know if they actually ever found Holder's first interview from February 17th of 2023, or is that one of the interviews that went missing or was lost? If anybody has the real answer to that or the actual answer, please let me know. I know that Holman has been on the stand at least twice. If Holman did, in fact, re-interview Holder on September 4th of 2023, it should be noted that the interview came on the heels of the defense team's contentious August 10th, 2023 deposition of Holman. The defense asked Holman, are you going to fix these problems or are you going to actually look for the truth? His response, I'm going to look for the truth, but I think I've already found the truth. But I definitely will look into this, no doubt about it. And I will find out if we have done the follow-ups, and I don't know about it. And I will let Prosecutor McClelland know, and he can forward that information to you. Footnote 84. Holman's deposition. The defense looks forward to watching the first Holder interview from February of 2017, as well as the most recent Holder interview, to see if Holman treated Holder as an actual suspect, a label befitting the strong evidence that connects him to the murders, or if Holman's interview consists of softball questions lobbied at Holder with the purpose of fending off the defense rather than seeking the truth. Right, Stephanie. Stephanie, who's also a lawyer. Stephanie, are you outraged by this? Are you outraged? Stephanie points out that Richard Allen confessed over 60 times to the murders. He also confessed to killing his wife, who's in court every day, and also confessed to killing his grandchildren who don't exist. He's also eating his own feces, smearing it all over his face. And nobody thought that was a big deal because, hey, it's prison. Drinking toilet water, we forgot that part. Eating paper. Was it recorded over? Thanks, Jad. I think that's what it might be right. So that Holder original interview from February 17 was recorded over. So nothing to see here, folks. Nothing to see here. Something else missing. Okay, Jojo, thank you. If these guys aren't involved, the guy who did this should be in the Vinlanders circle. There are a lot of them there in Indiana. Spooky says they're going to get the conviction. The false confession and the prosecutor's narrative is all they need. I don't know. We haven't seen the defense case yet. I don't know. Jessica Sunny says exactly that, combined with the correct info law enforcement fed him to make the confession believable. Right. Glitter Beauty's right. They kept telling Richard Allen he was wearing a blue jacket, and he kept saying black or blue, and tennis shoes, not boots. He also said skull hat, which is a beanie, looks nothing like the bridge guy hat or Brad Holder's. Skull cap is a beanie. Absolutely right. Reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt is all that the jury needs, right? That's what we're discussing now, Garrett. The evidence for a third party. That's what we're discussing now. This is the original Frank's motion. More is coming. Brad Holder created a creepy painting of a man believed to be Odin hanging upside down from a tree with his legs posed similarly to Abby's at the crime scene. This painting also contains 2 hidden Easter eggs, including a red F rune at the base of the tree, just like the F rune painted on the tree at the crime scene. I do not have a copy of this painting. I don't know that it's out there. If anybody has it, you can certainly, by all means, email it to me. I'm going to put my email up. You guys are totally collaborative, and I love that so much about you. It's just one of the many things that I love about my viewers and this community that we've created here. Fanbase at mlittlelaw.com. Hi, Nancy Joe. Thanks for the 10. The defense should call Click, and when the prosecution tries to impeach him on his current charges, the defense should argue beyond the scope. Insert sarcasm and eye roll. Yep. Anybody know if Click is still incarcerated? This was just, he was only arrested, I think, a week before the trial, maybe October 4th. Great point. That's what every objection from the state has been, beyond the scope. And according to some very highly educated attorneys who were in the courtroom, they're like, no, it's not beyond the scope. It is not beyond the scope. But that's what the judge is going. The judge is sustaining those objections. Where was I? Brad Holder provided at least 2 Easter eggs in this painting for anyone following him on Facebook. The first Easter egg is another example showcasing Holder's knowledge of the hush-hush crime scene guarded from the general public. You will notice at the base of the tree is a rune painted blood red. The rune looks like the letter F. Just like the letter F rune at the crime scene painted onto the tree using Libby's blood. The other Easter egg is the date that Brad Holder placed on the painting in the lower right-hand corner of the painting. You will see that it looks like 2/17 and then some gibberish. It looks, therefore, like a month, February, and a year, 2017. Abby and Libby were slain in February of 2017. Upon closer inspection, it appears that the date in the corner may be 2/17/18. If so, this painting was drawn 1 year to the day that Brad Holder was interviewed by the police and then essentially dropped as a suspect. Is this just a fluke that Holder painted a red F at the base of this tree almost 1 year to the day that the girls were slain when the crime scene was a guarded secret? Is it just a fluke that the date in the right-hand corner of this eerie painting shows 2/17? Unified Command would probably say, yes, just a coincidence. Okay, listen up to this. 2016, Brad Holder video from his Facebook page shows a pagan ritual with the most important part at the very end. A man that looks like Patrick Westphal appears to be using his fingers to paint a tree. Libby's blood was found on one of the trees at the crime scene in the form of an F that someone painted onto the tree using their fingers or some type of utensil. On December 12th of 2018, Tony Liggett received an email from law enforcement officer Greg Ferency. Rest in peace. It is a very informative email concerning Brad Holder's supposed alibi and the investigation into whether Holder dumped his old phone and received a new phone number, and also whether Holder sold his vehicle after 2/13/17. You know who didn't sell his vehicle? Richard Allen. Did Holder go onto a military base and crack his SIM card in half and throw it into two different dumpsters? I wonder. The very last paragraph discusses a ceremony that Holder videotaped in Fort Wayne in 2016. Ferency left a Facebook link so that Liggett could watch the ceremony. This video was not turned over to the defense until the defense made the specific request for the video sometime in August of 2023. The defense has made a copy of this 2016 video of the ODINISM ceremony, filmed by Brad Holder, and marked that copy as Exhibit 49. The defense is providing that video, as well as other exhibits referenced in this memorandum, directly to the judge's staff in the Allen County Courthouse. This roughly 25-minute ceremony itself is odd. At the beginning of the video, Brad Holder is revealed as the person videotaping the ceremony. During the last few minutes of the video, when the presumed Odinites are dumping water at the base of the tree, you see a man that appears to be Patrick Westphal enter the scene. Once he's at the tree, you can see this person use his hand to what looks like mark the tree. Unfortunately, the viewer cannot see what word, letter, or symbol, if any, this person, presumably Westphal, is marking the tree. The marking appears to occur at a similar height from the base of the tree as the marking of Libby's blood was in the crime scene photos. Ferency sent a link of this video directly to Liggett. This video seems to show Westphal marking the tree in a similar manner in which the F tree was marked with Libby's blood at the crime scene. Even Ferency commented on Westphal marking the tree in the email. Yet, Liggett either intentionally or recklessly disregarded this evidence, potentially linking both Holder and Westphal to the crime scene. Thank you for the painting. Thank you for the painting, Sleepwalking Sophie. You guys are so amazing. You're so collaborative and so helpful, because I'm just a one-woman show over here. And I love you all so much. Here's the painting to which they are referring. This was posted by Brad Holder, February 17th of 2018, 1 year post. What say you? The caption is, well, I started back. Acrylic, hail Odin. And it's public. It's public. Or it was. Glitter Beauty says, imagine if it was Brad Holder in court, they would have a lot more evidence to show. Insanity. Disturbing. Emmy says, in the painting, the F rune is painted on a rock under the tree. See if we can. Right here, is this what you're referring to? The tree, right in the middle at the base of the tree. Joyce says, I'm so horrified. I just ashed in my pill holder instead of the ashtray. Kiki. This chat is wonderful. I'm so glad I'm part of it. Big thank you to the mods. Teresa says if they take down holder, they're all going with them. It's creepy. Annie says, I believe this theory, but why wouldn't they claim credit publicly, though? Claim credit for the murders? I mean, it's not like other organizations that may do such things as is, terrorist attacks and things like that. I don't know why they would claim credit publicly. If anybody has an answer to that, let me know. Because prison time. Jeeves says not like they did publicly claim credit through the symbology of the runes. Yeah. Exactly, right? Doesn't this painting represent claiming credit? Yeah. Kinda, right? This picture is kinda Easter eggs. Jeeves says not like white supremacists are smart. Back to the document. The F rune formed with sticks on the ground resembles an F rune found on the tree in Libby's blood. Attached to the memorandum is a photo provided to the defense and discovery from Brad Holder's Facebook page. The photo shows an F that Holder made from sticks from a tree. This image is marked as Exhibit 50. The defense took that image and placed it side by side with the F made from Libby's blood at the crime scene and marked that side by side photograph as Exhibit 51. Again, these exhibits display yet another example of Holder posting to Facebook images that mimic information from the crime scene unavailable to the public in two ways. One, sticks are used like the runes on the girls, and two, the F rune is used as the F rune is used and painted on the tree. I do have a picture of that F rune that he posted. And this is something that Brad Holder posted February 21st of 2016. So 1 year before the murders. And this also is public. The location is noted as Hervey Preserve and Labyrinth. Then they go on to talk about a meme that he posted 3 days after the girls are found murdered, which discussed how real friends will help you move dead bodies, and then the friends will keep their mouths shut. This meme was deleted at some point in time, but still recovered by law enforcement. It's a still shot from the movie Goodfellas. That said, your real ones don't judge you or ask a bunch of questions. And there was an image of the Goodfellas moving a dead body. They help you move the body and never speak of it again. So 3 days earlier, Brad's son's girlfriend was found murdered. The girls' bodies were moved at the crime scene from one location where they were killed to a different location at the crime scene, where they were then found on February 14th of 2017. Toby Lazenby and Tony Liggett in private know that it took many men to accomplish all the tasks needed for that crime scene to exist the way it existed when the bodies were found. The timing is certainly curious. For a man who should have been mourning the brutal death of his son's girlfriend, a meme about moving dead bodies should create curiosity with law enforcement, especially when considering all the other evidence that links Holder to the crime scene. Why did Holder erase this meme? Was this meme a quick shout out to Brad Holder's Odinite buddies, thanking them for helping him with the bodies? Did this meme reveal the brazenness and overconfidence that Holder had concerning the belief that he would get away with the murders? These are questions that could have been posed to Holder in an aggressive interrogation. However, for Liggett and the rest of the Unified Command, the meme was just, quote, nothing to see here. Okay, listen to this one now. It gets even more, as if it couldn't get even more chilling. 2 a.m. Facebook post 12 hours after the girls go missing that says his testosterone is through the roof. This post was later deleted as well. Although Brad Holder told police that he went from work straight to the gym to work out in Logansport in the afternoon, here is Brad Holder at 2 a.m., purportedly at a fitness center, proclaiming that his energy and testosterone is through the roof right now. Find attached that Facebook post marked as Exhibit 53. Why was his testosterone so high? Why was his energy level so high? Why did he claim to go to the gym at 2 a.m. when he also claimed he had been to the gym just a few hours earlier? Why was he at the gym when he was supposed to be at work in a couple of hours? Did he go to work the next day? Why did he delete his Facebook post? Why would he be saying these things when his son is purportedly upset about his girlfriend being missing, as the girls had not yet been found when Holder posted this message to Facebook? Law enforcement officers, to our knowledge, never asked these questions in an aggressive interrogation of Holder. 87. Footnote 87. The defense can't be sure what was asked of Holder at either his February 17th, 2017 interview or his September 4th, 2023 interviews, as law enforcement have failed to provide that to the defense, at least at the time of the filing of this memorandum. Although, on the September 11th, 2023, the prosecution informed the defense that yet another round of additional evidence is available for pickup. The defense should be picking up the new discovery on September 18th of 2023. Perhaps these videos will be found in the latest round of discovery over 9 months after the defense entered their appearance. Perhaps they did at the recent September 4th, 2023 interview. We shall see. In Greg Ferency's December 12th, 2018 email to Tony Liggett, Ferency had a few questions about Holder's deleted email. This includes questioning whether Holder's alibi about being at the gym should be further considered. Holder's purported alibi is discussed in a later section. Now they're going to go on to talk about Brad Holder's connection to Elvis Fields. We talked a little bit about Elvis Fields. I think, I'm not sure which stream it was, the first or second one, when we started on this path of stuff the jury's not going to be able to hear about so far. Elvis Fields is the guy who confessed to 2 of his sisters shortly after the murders, and also in an interview with police said something like, if my spit is found on one of the girls, am I going to be in trouble? But they get into it a little bit more here. Brad Holder's Facebook page links him to Elvis Fields in Rushville, Indiana. Elvis has admitted to participating in the murders and to now being part of a gang, even providing intimate details of the crime scene that only those participating in the murder would know. Elvis followed Brad Holder on Facebook and even recreated Brad Holder's Facebook pages like a fanboy. Makes sense near the finish of this section, detailing some of the evidence that links Brad Holder to the murders by supplying the court with certain Facebook posts by Brad Holder that were mimicked and even recreated by a man named Elvis Fields. This will allow for a smooth transition to the next suspect on whom this memo will be focused, Elvis Fields. Who is Elvis Fields, this man that was mimicking Brad Holder's Facebook posts from 126 miles away? You will soon learn that he is a man that has admitted to both of his sisters that he was involved in the murders, a man that told his sister that because of his involvement, he was now part of a gang and had a brother. A man who, after providing his DNA, asked police that if he could explain why his spit might be on one of the girls, would he still be in trouble? And then admitted to his sister that he did in fact spit on one of the girls, and perhaps most incriminating, a man who provided intimate details about the crime scene, the type of detail that only those who were at the crime scene could possess. Upon closer inspection, you will learn that Brad Holder and Elvis Fields did in fact have a common connection, Johnny Messer, but that Elvis lied to police, claiming Elvis, did not know Johnny Messer. This is so twisted. So twisted. Tracy Turner says it makes sense now that the girls didn't act afraid in the video with Bridge Guy. They knew players and trusted the players and killers. Law Jockey says, Melanie, I saw your post to Andrea last night. Oh, thanks. Did you watch it? I was riveted. Law Jockey, I could not turn away. It was like 6 hours. I am so proud to have such amazing, strong, opinionated, successful women to watch and listen to. Love you, ladies. Oh, thank you so much for your compliment. That is very sweet. Spooky says, what a twisted mess. Suzanne, this trial has certainly brought out things very far from what we were led to believe prior to this trial. Judge Gull is worse than Bev at this point, and that says something. How is she still a judge? Powerful people in powerful places. Glitter Beauties, thank you for the 10. I just wanted to say thank you for everything you do. I've tried to send people over from Andrea's because these documents are so important and you do a great job of going over them. Thank you. Thank you. I'm just a girl trying to do my part from the comfort of my home studio, where Andrea and Bob and Lee and Lauren are doing the hard work of sitting in line or having people sit in line for them all night, and then to sit there. Yesterday, court went until 6:30 p.m. and then to run back to their hotel or wherever they're staying and to go on and spread the information to everybody for 6 hours at a time. And if you all the coverage combined is something like, I can't even imagine how many hours of coverage. So I thought I could do my part and shine a light on all the stuff the jury's not going to hear, that so many people don't know about. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. It's the least I could do, falling into this Delphi rabbit hole that so many of you already were familiar with. Fruitback Hat, guessing none of this is coming into the trial. This was all known a year ago. The court knew about it a year ago. It remains to be seen. The motion has been renewed. It remains to be seen whether the judge is going to let any of this stuff in. But in my opinion, I think the jurors need to hear about this stuff so they can make a more educated decision. Stella, it's so important creators are in the courtroom. We owe them so much. Imagine if they weren't there. Yeah. Yeah, Scott, exactly. Can they bring it in organically? Asking it for a friend, right? Well, like what happened in the Karen retrial. If the witnesses bring it up organically, then, it's coming in. As Judge Bev said. Okay. Evidence provided by law enforcement shows that Elvis Field lived in Rushville, about 125 miles away from Delphi. Additionally, Elvis at first glance seemed to have no connection to Delphi or Logansport. Footnote 88 about Johnny Messer says, Elvis's videotaped October 18th, 18 interview at the 1520 mark attached as Exhibit 54. The state finally provided this videotaped interview to the defense on September 8th of 2023. What's the holdup here? What's the holdup here? Richard Allen was arrested in October of 2022. These interviews were done in 2018. They had all this information. It wasn't like this was new information. However, once law enforcement officers Ferency and Kevin Murphy learned that Elvis had confessed to his sisters, especially after Elvis posted a bizarre question to Murphy, these curious law enforcement officers wanted to look at Elvis's Facebook page and ultimately compared it with Brad Holder's Facebook page. What they found was extremely telling. Elvis was obviously following Brad Holder on Facebook as evidenced by the multiple posts that Elvis mimicked Holder. Elvis Fields was not only following Brad Holder's Facebook page, but Elvis was also emulating Brad Holder by recreating Brad Holder's Facebook posts in the year leading up to Abby and Libby's murders. The defense is attaching a series of 9x9 side-by-side photographs created by law enforcement. Law enforcement was following all of these theories till they were kicked off the case or murdered in the case of Ferency. Ferency was murdered before Richard Allen was arrested. On the left side of each exhibit is a photo that Brad Holder posted on his Facebook page. On the right side of each exhibit is a photo that Elvis Fields posted on his Facebook page, in which Elvis took the time to actually recreate the photograph that Holder posted. And then they go on to highlight a few of those side-by-side photographs, which I do not have, but I'm going to leave this here in case you want to go back and read that to yourself in greater detail later. Unfortunately, law enforcement failed to date the attached exhibits. This mimicking is certainly curious, especially when Brad Holder's son dated Abby Williams and when Elvis Fields, 125 plus miles away, confessed to both of his sisters on 2 different occasions that he was involved in the murders. This confession included telling one sister that Abby Williams was a troublemaker, and that is why he, Elvis, used sticks to form horns on Abby's head. Footnote 90. The defense will be providing the context for these statements, including photographs from the crime scene that support Elvis's statement. And admitting to another sister that he was in big trouble and going away for a while because he was present when the girls were murdered and that he spit on the girls. Footnote 91. On October 24th, 2017, Elvis told his sister, Joyce Moffett, that, quote, "I'm in trouble. I'm going away for a long time. I was on that trail and that bridge with those girls when they were murdered. There were 2 other people there with me when it happened. I spit on one of the girls after they were killed." That's according to Joyce Moffett's interview. What are the odds that Brad Holder's son is dating Abby Williams? And 125 miles away, a fanboy of Brad Holder named Elvis Fields was mimicking Brad Holder's Facebook posts, and that fanboy admitted to being involved in the murders of the girls. For Liggett and Holman, apparently, this coincidence was nothing important. Moreover, Trooper Roland Purdy refused to concede that Elvis's mimicked and recreated Facebook post proved any connection between Holder and Fields. Trooper Purdy explained that the mimicked and recreated photos between Brad Holder and Elvis Fields might just be a coincidence. Liggett failed to inform Judge Diener of the evidence supporting Brad Holder's involvement in the murders. Before moving on to the evidence that supports Elvis Fields' involvement in the murders, the defense finishes the Brad Holder section by 1, discussing Holder's purported alibi. Many of you have brought this up, so they're going to discuss that here. 2, showing the evidentiary linkage between Holder and Elvis Fields that supports Holder luring Elvis to get involvement in the murders in order to join him, Holder, and Holder's gang. And 3, the circumstances surrounding the Unified Command dropping the ball by intentionally or recklessly clearing Holder as a witness within weeks of the murders. Moving on to Holder's alibi. Sherilyn says there are no coincidences. Lynn says they would never kill children. Who, the Vinlanders would never kill children? I don't know. I don't know what they would or would not do. Fruitback hat, if a witness in the trial happened to be watching the stream, what would they have to say in court to get this to come in? I don't know. I'm sure it would be objected to and thrown out, and who knows? I don't know that any of these people are on the witness list. If anybody has or knows otherwise, let me know. Kiki Kazoo, thanks for the 5. Every case brings out different emotions. This one, I can't wrap my head around. Thank you for getting all eyes on this. Justice for these young girls. Yeah. Yeah, this is dark. It's evil. It is inhumane, the conditions in which Richard Allen has been held, was held for over a year, when we are supposed to believe in the United States of America that suspects are innocent until proven guilty. It's horrifying. Majesta Alexander, thank you for the 5. Ferency was murdered by a retired correctional officer. Thank you. We pulled up that article earlier. He was murdered. He was murdered in June or July of 2021 prior to the arrest of Richard Allen by a guy named Shane Meehan, who threw a Molotov cocktail into or in front of the FBI building and then shot him multiple times as he came out of the building. He's currently awaiting trial in federal court. Thank you, Majesta, for the 5 and for pointing that out to those who may have joined late. Back to Holder's alibi. Holder's alibi was not scrutinized, and evidence supports Holder recruited mentally infirm Elvis Fields to assist in the abduction and murders, while Holder tried to stand behind a shady alibi. Holder's alibi was not even close to fully vetted. Whenever Holder's name was brought up as a suspect, one reason that kept popping up as to why Holder was cleared as a suspect was his purported alibi. An unclassified FBI report revealed the work or lack of work that law enforcement performed to check out Holder's alibi. Oh, new motions were filed this morning by the defense, Rachel. Thank you. I'll take a look into that. An unclassified report. Oh, I just read that. Okay. This report was prepared on April 13th, 2017. In this report, Pulaski Sheriff's Deputy Frederick Rogers followed up at Liberty Landfill in an attempt to verify the employment and the work schedule of Bradley, when they spelled his name wrong. Does that remind you of anybody's name being spelled wrong in other police reports? Holder. Susan Case from Human Resources stated that Holder's time card showed that he, Holder, clocked in at 4:55 a.m. and clocked out at 2:45 p.m. Chase also said that she would be the only person that could change or manipulate the electronic time card. Chase also said that Chase further admitted that there was a security camera on site. Here's how Deputy Rogers memorialized that part of their conversation. Okay, so this was April 13th of 2017. They're checking into Brad Holder's alibi 2 months since the murders. Case advised Brad drives a junky red truck to work with a G on the front bumper. Case advised the security camera at the scales may have picked up his vehicle coming and going on that date. Case advised that Holder stays on property for his lunch break. The short report concludes with this. Case provided this officer a copy of the timesheet for this week, showing Brad indeed had clocked in and out on February 13th, and he was still at work on today's date. Footnote 93. If Holder was at work the day the deputy showed up to vet Holder's alibi, it would have been a great time to interview Holder and those around him to better determine if Holder was at work on Monday, February 13th of 2017. Here is what we don't know about Holder's alibi at work. Number 1, did someone clock in for Holder? There's nothing that Chase said about the clocking in process that would prevent someone else from clocking in for Holder. Whether Holder was at work on February 13th, 2017 could have been better vetted by simply talking to Holder's workmates that would have been on the job site on February 13th, 2017 to determine if they remember Brad Holder being present at work on February 13th. 2, did someone clock out for Holder? Same logic applies to this question. Perhaps Holder clocked in, but then left early and asked one of his work buddies to clock out for him. It is unknown whether Odinites worked alongside Holder at the landfill, as it appears that Deputy Rogers did very little investigative work on this very important topic of Holder's alibi, nor did anyone at Unified Command provide instructions for law enforcement to fully investigate every aspect of Holder's alibi. 3. Did Chase actually watch the video? The report is so poorly written that it can't be determined whether Holder's distinctive vehicle could be seen on the video or whether Chase was merely claiming that, hey, if you want to watch a video from the camera placed near the scales, it may show Holder's truck is coming and going. 4. Did anyone in law enforcement watch the video alluded to by Chase? And if so, what did they see? It's quite maddening that the report refers to the possibility that a simple review of a video could determine whether Holder's junky red truck with a G on its front bumper was seen coming and going on February 13th. However, the fact is that this report does not inform anyone of whether law enforcement ever viewed this video. It would be presumed that if the deputy did watch the video, he would have memorialized it. 5. Even if Holder's truck was viewed on the video, was Holder the person driving the truck as it arrived at the work site? Perhaps the video would be able to show the image of the person driving the truck to see if it was Holder. 6. Even if Holder's truck was viewed on the video, was Holder the person driving the truck as it left the work site? In the event that Holder wanted to appear showing up for work, but then left early in someone else's vehicle, who picked Holder up the site to get to Delphi in the early afternoon, it would be important to know who was driving the truck when it left the property. It is only 24.3 miles or 32 minutes from Buffalo, Indiana to Delphi, Indiana, according to a Google search. Even if Brad Holder actually clocked out at 2:45 p.m., he could have been in Delphi before 3:15 p.m. If Holder left at noon and had a buddy of his clock him out a couple hours early to create the illusion that Holder was there all day, then Holder could have been at the trail by 1 p.m. This is why watching the video and interviewing employees who worked alongside Holder would have been a critical step taken in the investigation. Asking simple questions to his workmates like, did Brad leave for any period of time? Did Brad leave early? Was Brad even here? There's no excuse at all for failing to interview employees and failing to watch the video. These failures leave open the real possibility that Brad Holder's alibi cannot be trusted without further vetting. Did police ever consider that Brad Holder convinced his minions to abduct and participate in sacrificing the girls until he arrived? Evidence supports this theory, including a sketch of a man milling around the High Bridge near the spot of the famous video. That sketch resembles Elvis Fields. Even Trooper Purdy can't deny that fact. Charles Manson did not serve a prison sentence for actually being the person that stabbed Sharon Tate 16 times. Manson's minions committed the heinous acts. Was it ever considered that Holder had devised the plan to kill those girls and used others to do his bidding? According to Unified Command's Jerry Holman, it was considered, but there's no evidence. We have no evidence indicating that he was commanding people to go kill people, according to Holman's deposition. Then Holman commented on this very serious topic. I mean, ask Richard Allen if Brad Holden. Oh boy, this is a cold read. Hold on. I mean, ask Richard Allen if Brad Holder told him to go kill the girls. I mean, you guys communicate with the guy that killed the girls. This is what Holman said at his deposition. Holman's comment offers insight into Holman's mind-blowing lack of curiosity and his limited investigative skill set. Holman's refusal to consider whether evidence supported the possibility that Holder was directing minions is par for the course of what the defense has learned from a review of the evidence. Since Holman is not interested in facts that support the possibility or even likelihood that Holder was directing others to participate in the crime, here are a few pieces of evidence that support the premise that Logan, Holman, and Liggett and all of Unified Command either recklessly or intentionally ignored. 1. Brad Holder was from Logansport, Indiana, close to Delphi. 2. Patrick Westfall was from Delphi. 3. Johnny Messer was from Rushville, roughly 125 miles from Delphi. 4. Elvis Fields was from Rushville, roughly 125 miles from Delphi. 5. Rushville's Johnny Messer was a Vinlander / Odinite and good friends with fellow Vinlander / Odinite Brad Holder from Logansport. 6. Rushville's Johnny Messer was a Vinlander / Odinite and good friends with fellow Vinlander / Odinite Patrick Westfall from Logansport. 7. Rushville's Johnny Messer recruited for his Vinlander gang all the time. Footnote 98. Well, first let's go back to footnote 97, which says Johnny Messer was from Roughville, 125 miles from Delphi. Footnote 97 says, find attached information on Johnny Messer provided to the defense in discovery. This information appears to have been made for a PowerPoint presentation and features Messer's photograph and other information, including the fact that Messer was on home detention for a January 2018 meth arrest. This document is marked as Exhibit 66. Rushville's Johnny Messer recruited for his Vinlander gang all the time. Footnote 98 says, Johnny's ex-girlfriend told investigators that Johnny attempted to recruit others all the time. Find attached Exhibit 67, which defense received in discovery and appears to be a document prepared for a PowerPoint presentation. Eight. Investigators learned that in the summer of 2016, Johnny Messer was recruiting men that lived in his Rushville apartment complex to attend Vinlander meetings. 99. Odin report, page 8, interview of Brandon Mansfield. Mansfield has entered the chat. 9. Also, that same summer of 2016, Elvis Fields was already mimicking and recreating Brad Holder's Facebook posts. Footnote 100. Exhibit 68 shows that on July 27, 2016, Brad Holder posted one of the photos mimicked and recreated by Elvis Fields, a cross formed out of sticks on the ground, also found in Exhibit 62. Although the side-by-side photos are not dated, this solo photo was found providing the date that Holder posted it. This fact would provide evidence that Johnny Messer had already recruited Elvis Fields and introduced him to Brad Holder, and that Elvis was now following the group's leader, Brad Holder, on Facebook, and that Elvis was also emulating Holder. 10. The recruiter, Johnny Messer, was a friend / acquaintance of Elvis Fields, also from Rushville. It just reminded me of the testimony of, why does her name escape me? The witness in the Karen Reed trial who knew a girl, went to high school with a girl named Caitlin Albert. She was an acquaintance. I wouldn't say she's exactly a friend. She's an acquaintance. And then the defense came up with Facebook posts and other photos of them in hot tubs together. She was the EMT, Katie McLaughlin, that was her name. Just an acquaintance. Number 11, the recruiter, Johnny Messer, therefore knew both Brad Holder and Elvis Fields. Number 12, the recruiter, Johnny Messer, knew both Patrick Westfall and Elvis Fields. Number 13, the recruiter, Johnny Messer, admitted in his October 23, 2018 videotaped interview. He's the recruiter, Johnny Messer. That Rod Abrams, Ned Smith, and Elvis were all interested in joining the same club that he and Holder were involved in, but he, Messer, claimed that he did not think Vinlanders would be interested in them. Footnote 101. This whole dialogue between law enforcement, Todd Click, arrested, maybe still incarcerated a week before this trial started, coincidentally, for, crimes that go to his truth and veracity and credibility, coincidentally or not, I don't know. This whole dialogue between LEO, Todd Click, and Johnny Messer took place beginning at the 1417 mark. Ned Smith claimed to be the father figure of Elvis, and Rod Abrams and was rarely separated from Elvis. See Elvis's 10/18/18 videotaped interview. Ned Smith claims throughout the video that he is a father figure to Elvis and Ned. At the 15:42 mark, Ned claims to be around Elvis every day in 2017. It might be telling that Ned Smith paid for Elvis's attorney and that Ned Smith wanted to be present at Elvis's interview. This motion, this request for Frank's hearing by the defense is 138 pages. It was summarily denied in a decision that was literally a page and a half by the judge. That was footnote 101. Okay. Messer's comment appears as a self-serving attempt to distance himself from being the person that connected Holder with Elvis in light of the fact that Dougie, a man who was mentally infirm, had been affiliated with the club. See footnote 102. 14, Brad Holder and Patrick Westphal were known for taking advantage of mentally infirm men who wanted to join Holder's and Westphal's gang, the Vinlanders. 15, when mentally infirm men wanted to join Brad Holder's and Patrick Westphal's gang, they, Holder and Westphal, would take advantage of these men, including having these mentally infirm men perform tasks. 102. Odin Report, page 5. Taylor Hornaday describes how Brad Holder and Patrick Westphal took advantage of a mentally infirm man by the name of Dougie, asking him to perform menial tasks for them. Also find attached Exhibit 69, which is a summation that appears was prepared by police for a PowerPoint presentation that also discusses lower functioning Dougie being used by Holder and Messer as a gopher. (16) Elvis Fields was a mentally infirm man. Trooper Kevin Murphy described Elvis as having the mental capacity of maybe a 7 or 8-year-old. (103) Murphy's deposition. 17. Evidence provided by law enforcement shows that Elvis Fields, 125 plus miles away and with no connection to Delphi or Logansport, was following Brad Holder on Facebook. 18. Evidence provided by law enforcement shows that Elvis Fields was not only following Brad Holder, but that Elvis was also emulating Brad Holder by taking the time to recreate Brad Holder's Facebook posts in the year leading up to the Abby's and Libby's murders. 19. Elvis's Facebook mimicking of Holder's post may show that Elvis Fields was enamored of Brad Holder and also wanted to be a part of Holder's gang, the Vinlanders. 20. Holder was known to prey on lower functioning members of society and to take advantage of them, and Elvis was a lower functioning member of society. 21. Was Holder grooming Elvis, hoping that down the road, Elvis would do Holder's bidding? 22. Did Elvis actually do Holder's bidding? Evidence support that Elvis did, in fact, do Brad Holder's bidding. 23. An eyewitness observed a man within a few hundred yards of the Monon High Bridge where the girls were abducted. That man looked like Elvis Fields. The name of the eyewitness is Teresa Lebert. Teresa Lebert lived on the same side of the Monon High Bridge, only 560 yards from the very place where the famous Down the Hill video was taken. Footnote 104. See Exhibit 70, screenshot from Google Maps depicting distance between Lebert property and the location of where the Down the Hill video was taken. A paved road, County Road, this is paragraph 26, a paved road, County Road 625 West, ends almost in front of Teresa Lebert's home. 27. However, that road turns into a private gravel road that continues toward the Monon High Bridge and services the home of Brad Weber. 28. Around 8:30 a.m. on the morning of February 13th of 2013, Teresa Lebert observed a man on 625 West near her house standing near mailboxes used by property owners nearby. Her affidavit is attached. 29. Teresa Lebert has never observed the homeowners walk to their mailboxes because of the distance from their homes to the mailboxes. The homeowners drive their vehicles to drop off and pick up their mail. 30. Teresa Lebert had never seen this man before. 31. Teresa Lebert was in the passenger side of a truck being driven by her husband, Dave Lebert. 32. The man Teresa Lebert observed was standing very close to the passenger side of the Lebert truck as they passed him. 33. Teresa Lebert, sitting higher in the truck, had a good view of this man's face as she passed him and noticed that the man appeared to be startled and concerned at being seen. 34. Teresa Lebert, in fact, turned to her husband and asked something like, "What do you think he's doing?" 35. After passing the man and driving approximately 50 more yards to their driveway, the Leberts exited the truck. 36. After exiting the truck, Teresa looked in the direction of where the man had been and noticed he was gone. Teresa did not see him on the road at all. Teresa believes the man had to immediately and intentionally hide after they passed him on the road, which would explain his sudden disappearance. The only reason anyone would be walking down that dead-end road would be if they were lost or if they were going to see the Lebert family or the Weber family. Teresa also remembers that the man she observed was wearing a canvas jacket that was nondescript in color, but doesn't remember a hat. Later, Teresa Lebert was asked to provide a description of the man's face that she observed that morning. She did provide the description. The sketch of the man that Teresa Lebert observed that morning closely resembles Elvis Fields. Even State Trooper Purdy had to admit that the Teresa Lebert sketch and the photo of Elvis Fields resemble one another. That was Purdy's deposition. Find attached the Teresa Lebert sketch marked as Exhibit 71 and a photograph of Elvis Fields provided in discovery that Purdy was comparing with the sketch marked as Exhibit 2, Exhibit 72 and 71. After the girls were murdered, Elvis told his sister that he was now part of a gang and had a brother. 45. Was the gang mentioned by Elvis Vinlanders, and was the brother Brad Holder? Again, these are the type of questions the monumentally inept Unified Command should have been asking. Here's another good time to point out that these are not theories made up by the defense out of whole cloth. These are theories and investigation that were done by law enforcement. That's where the defense got this information. Except for when they had to go to Georgia to find Ryan Bucher to give them the picture from the Facebook that wasn't turned over by the prosecution. Trooper Derry Holman indicated in his deposition that there was no evidence that Brad Holder may have directed others to kill the girls. As stated earlier, Holman even proclaimed that Holder was not even really a suspect. The defense disagrees. Sometimes it just takes a little digging, a little curiosity, and the ability to put pieces of a puzzle together. Let's take a break from reading for a second. How many of you already knew all of this information? If you already knew it all, put a 1 in the chat. If this is all new to you, I like the shade in this writing too. Put a 2 in the chat. If it's new, put a 2 in the chat. If you knew all of this stuff before, put a 1 in the chat. Graphics Nut says this is heavy. This is heavy. Okay, so we have some 1s in the chat, people who knew about it. Ricka says years ago. Some 2s. Ones and 2s, knew some. Lone Wolf, knowledge is power. Laura says it appears law enforcement was covering up for Brad Holder and friends. Some people might come to that conclusion. AW says too, grateful to hear it now. A lot of people didn't know. Yeah, Tracy, this is the Frank's motion that goes denied without even looking at it. It's 138, 6 pages long. Her decision on this was about a page and a half, but they've since renewed that motion. They renewed it a week ago. Has not been ruled on yet. The argument is that the door has been opened to the Odinism or Norse paganism theory because one of the state witnesses testified that they believed that the sticks or branches placed upon the girls were placed randomly. So the argument by the defense is, well, that opens the door because now we're allowed to set forth, the jury should hear about our theory about the sticks and branches. Vicinator, they placed the sticks on them for a reason, and it wasn't just to conceal the bodies. These girls deserve justice, and what is happening is the furthest thing from justice. The world is watching, right? The world is watching. New Hampshire woman, I knew some of it, but not the depth of it. Jennifer, one, but it's great to be refreshed, and it's a good time to refresh now, isn't it? It's a good time to refresh because so many of you are watching the daily recaps from all of our YouTube friends who are in the courtroom. And the jury's not going to hear about any of this. There is so much more evidence for this theory with regard to some of these people than there is, in my opinion, against Richard Allen. The interrogations that they watched yesterday in court were done over 5 years. October 2022. The killings were February of 2017. Richard Allen voluntarily went to the station to say, oh yeah, I was there. What can I help with? How can I help? They took a statement from him in a parking lot. They don't call him back for another interview until almost 6 years later. If I asked you today what you were wearing 5.5 years ago on a particular day, would you know? Would you remember where you parked? Would you remember what time you got there, what time you left? And then when the interrogator started to say to you, I know you effing did it. I know you effing did it. You're what you want to really drag your wife and your daughter into this. How would you behave? Would you get angry? Glitter Beauties, this is so disturbing, truly. Fields confesses, Brad Holder brags about the murders. His son was dating Abigail, and law enforcement clears them without extracting phone, taking DNA, or even getting their alibis. Majesta says, holy cow, Dr. Walla wasn't even a licensed psychologist when treating Richard Allen. John Beatabot, so the prosecution's a total farce? Well, you can listen to what I'm saying, and you can listen to what they're hearing in court every day, and you can come to your own conclusions. But I will tell you, John, Richard Allen was held in solitary for a year in a prison in the hole on suicide watch. His only interaction was a guard that sat outside his cell, which was 8 by 12, which is the size of a parking space, until he was so mentally decrepit, given shots of Haldol, I think, and what other medications? Do you guys know what other psychotropic medications he was put on? Congratulations, Jessica. Cancer-free. Congratulations. To the point where Richard Allen was eating his own feces, smearing it all over his face, banging his head against the wall for hours at a time, and started confessing gibberish. Heavy metal rehab. Melanie, with Ron Logan being mentioned in the video in court yesterday, does that open the door to third party? I would need more information. I don't know. I wasn't there. That's a great point. Ron Logan is the man who owned the property where the girls were found. He was the owner of the property. Let's watch a video. Let's watch a video for a minute so I can rest my voice. A video of Ron Logan's former girlfriend. Ron Logan is also dead, correct? How did Ron Logan die? I'll Google that while we watch this video. Is anybody else getting like, my YouTube is crashing constantly. When I'm watching videos of other people, my YouTube crashes and I get the, oh, snap. I don't know if YouTube is having issues. I don't know what that's about, but it's happening to me repeatedly. The, oh, snap. He died from COVID. Thanks. Just don't put, Majesta, thank you for the info. I'm just going to say, don't write that out in the chat. YouTube has like these AI programs that scan the chat. They don't like that word. We'll get shadow banned and all that kind of stuff. So let me find that video of Ron Logan's ex-girlfriend who thinks he did it. Oh, snap. Everyone's having snaps? I'm getting snaps all the time with YouTube. Is it a YouTube issue? Is it a, because Google owns YouTube. Is it a Google issue? Christy says, Ron Logan's gun also could not be excluded. Really? But Richard Allen's was a match? Come on. They said CVID, but he lied about an alibi too. Says Kelly Duckenbuquacky. Okay, you guys just don't spell it out. Just put CVID or something, please. They don't like it. Joyce is getting snap messages too, and thought Google wanted me to buy a new phone. It's happening on my laptop though too. Scott, same. Last 2 days have been extremely bad. It keeps kicking me out. Getting all the snaps. Are we looking at another? Are we looking at another hack? Wait, Ron Logan died in prison? Yeah, use the vid. I know. Thanks, Moon Goddess. Thanks, Moon Goddess. Thanks, Moon Goddess. Yeah. Do I really have to go through and delete all these comments? All right, let's take an exclusive interview. This was an exclusive interview with Ron Logan's ex-girlfriend, I guess she is. And this was done February of 2024, just this year. Ashley Banfield did this interview. So let's take a listen to this. Give me a few minutes to rest my voice before we move on to the next.
Her hand from the inside addiction.
Killer's voice.
I just need to move the captions out of the way.
No one. I don't recognize the voice at all.
That was the interview with Ron Logan. Take that back. This is Ron Logan, owner of the property where the girls' bodies were found.
At all.
I called the tip line.
Joining me now, News Nation senior national correspondent Brian Enton. So Connie Dillman seems so confident about this. Like, what else makes her think that it's her ex-boyfriend who's the killer?
Yeah, this was a big moment tonight, actually. We've never heard from Connie Dillman before. This is all brand new. So this is something we've never heard before. And let's also not forget in all this that Ron Logan is dead, by the way, for people who are following along. He died of COVID. But she basically says that he is a bad man, that he is a violent man, that she thinks that he did it, that he was violent with her in the past. And as you heard in that clip, that when she heard that voice, she thought right away that it was Ron Logan. Listen to a little more of what she said for the first time tonight about what kind of man this is.
Okay, and then she had to take a break after she said that she was pretty much a sex tool. She says it's his voice on the video.
Out of that situation, but it took a long time.
It really is stunning to hear her tell that story for the first time. She's obviously very emotional. And again, she feels confident, Connie does, that the wrong guy may be locked up, which is pretty startling to think about.
Not only that, but Ron Logan had kind of a weird alibi. And from what I remember 7 years ago, it didn't really check out.
So weird. So he claimed to police that he was going to a town outside of Delphi to buy tropical fish, and that he was with his cousin. But we later come to find out that when they looked into this, they talked to the cousin. The cousin didn't back that up. They were never able to clear that alibi, to figure out if it was true or not. And even to this day, it seems like he lied about where he went.
Pretty specific when you're mentioning tropical fish, and easy to track that. But this is a small community, and they're not used to having double homicides, especially with kids. So, I mean, I've seen it happen. All right. So, what about the property? Like, they did look at his property. They actually did investigate, but I feel like it might have been a long lag.
They did, but it was a month after the murders. So think about it. A month has gone by. There's so much that could have been done out there at that property in that time. A month.
Month is a long time for anything.
Right.
I mean, even the weather can take.
I mean, there were a lot of mistakes with this investigation, a lot of issues, and this just seems like it was another one.
But thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find new.
So there's that. Somebody pointed me to that yesterday, and I thought that was interesting. Go to the chat for a minute. Hi, Wendy. Can you show up throw up your email again? I wanted to send you a couple of pictures of Holder, Richard Allen in the first sketch. It is fanbase@mlittlelaw.com. Thank you. Thank you. Although I think maybe you already sent it. So let me see. Okay. Got that one. Sleepwalking Sophie of the Sticks. I got the tree. Thank you. And let's see. Wendy sent me some pictures of Holder compared to Alan, compared to the sketch. So let's take a look at those. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. Kurt voted today. Get out there and vote. Do it today. Thanks, Kurt. Thanks for paying me $5 to tell everyone to go and vote. I appreciate it. Ken Weber. Thanks for joining. Just as in the Reed case, I get the feeling that Alan must be guilty, framed, so no one will look elsewhere. You put me in solitary for over a year and I'll cop to the Julius Caesar murder. You're a former corrections officer? Interesting. Conditions under which this guy was held are inhumane, cruel, and inhuman treatment. My opinion. Just my opinion. Let's take a look that what Wendy sent? That is Brad Holder. Brad Holder. Brad Holder. Richard Allen. And the sketch. Was it the first sketch or the second sketch? I think this was the first sketch, right? First sketch. Thanks, Wendy. See, this hat is not, it's not a skull cap. I mean, it's what I would call like a newsboy cap. Like, it's not even like a baseball cap. A baseball cap would have a longer brim, right? This is the first sketch. Okay, thank you. So this one was put out 2017, shortly after the murders. The second one wasn't put out, I think, until 2019. Looks like an Irish cap. Yeah, I would call that like a newsboy cap, right? English driving cap, Irish cap. But does it look like Richard Allen? I mean, well, this was his arrest, so this was 2022. And this was Brad Holder around the same time. Look at that. I mean, it's like the same cap, right? And this cap that he has on here, I can't tell if this is a baseball cap, but it doesn't look like it. It's hard to tell. Same sort of cap there, right? Yeah, reasonable doubt. Same sort of cap, and he seems to fancy that kind of cap, kind of an Irish thing, not a baseball hat, right? We call it a flat cap. Indie Girl calls it a flat cap. A scally hat. A scally cat. A scally cap. Thank you. Thank you, scally cap. Did Richard Allen even own that kind of cap? He said he would usually carry a skull cap in his pocket. Just you know, reasonable doubt is all the jury needs, right? But they're not even going to know about it. Linda says to me that don't look like Richard to me. That's just my opinion. Let me see if I can show you the two sketches side by side. Because they want the jury to believe they're the same person. And then they tried to keep the sketches out. So there's that. It's also important to note that none of the eyewitnesses who testified were asked if Richard Allen is the guy they saw on the bridge. Can you identify him? Is that him sitting over there? Can you point to him in the courtroom? Nobody was asked. Because you don't ask a question you don't know the answer to as a good attorney. Here's the second sketch. They want the jury and you and the worldwide public to believe that those two sketches are the same person. That redhead says we must abolish solitary. Scally cap. New motion asking for a third party again. Maybe the door's been open. Is it newer than the one that I have from last Wednesday, which was like the 23rd? Let me see if I can get hold of it. Hang on. Somebody told me yesterday in the chat to look for the helicopter footage, that the answers are in the helicopter footage. I mean, I found some helicopter footage, but I don't know what I'm looking for. So if anybody wants to point me out to that, that would be great. Ah, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, we both reached for the gun, for the gun. Well, this one is 10 pages long. Would you like to take a look at this? This is the newest filing. This was just hot off the press, filed this morning at 9:21 a.m. I say we do it. Let's just skip right to the new stuff because this is hot off the press, and everyone who's in the courtroom today doesn't have time to cover the motions. And so I can do that. I can do my part with you here. Just looking at the people who testified yesterday. So yesterday they had John Gallipo, the former warden at Westville Correctional Facility, the one who Andrea said seemed, I don't know if she said evil, but I'll say evil based on her description. Like, yeah, that's just the way they treat him. You know, it's prison. No big whoop. Ethan Drang, who was a Westville Correctional Officer, then Michael Clemens, another Westville Correctional Officer, and Michael Roberts, who was also a Westville Correctional Officer. Some of those were his suicide companions. Thank you, Rachel, for pointing this out. And here we are on top of the exact motion that was filed this morning at 9:21 a.m. There's the date stamp. The accused second motion to admit evidence of Odinism / Norse paganism / ritualistic killing, and also motion to admit evidence admit evidence concerning Elvis Fields and Brad Holder as third-party suspects. Well, look at that. We were just talking about them. Their ears must be ringing. We were just talking about them. Comes now the accused Richard Allen by and through counsel and moves this court to admit certain evidence that this court thus far has prevented the defense from presenting to the jury pursuant to its September 4th, 2024 order granting the state of Indiana's April 29th, 2024 motion in limine, as the closed captions once called it. In support of said motion, the defense states the following. Number one, on October 23rd, 2024, the defense has previously filed his first motion to admit evidence of Odinism, Norse paganism / ritualistic killing. Two, since that motion was filed, additional evidence has been elicited through testimony and other evidence that further opened the door to admission of Odinism / Norse paganism / ritualistic killing. Three, also, since that October 23rd, 2024 motion was filed, additional evidence has been elicited through testimony and other evidence that opened the door for the defense to bring in evidence that third-party suspects Elvis Fields and Brad Holder were involved in the killing of the victims. Well, well, well. Additional evidence admitted during the trial that supports introduction of Odinism, Norse paganism, ritualistic killing evidence. Paragraph 4. On Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024, forensic pathologist Core testified that A, possibly 2, possibly 3, possibly 4 instruments were used to cut the necks of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. B, that in his autopsy report, Dr. Core believed that some cuts may have involved the use of a serrated instrument and other cuts may have involved the use of a non-serrated instrument, providing the possibility that more than one person was involved in the murders. C, during his testimony, Dr. Core backtracked somewhat, but still did not exclude the possibility that the injuries to Abigail Williams and Liberty Williams, oh, well, that's a typo. Should be Abigail Williams and Liberty German, were caused by both a serrated and a non-serrated instrument. 5. Also, since the trial began, the prosecution admitted certain crime scene photographs into evidence, including photographs of the crime scene in which the sticks on the girls were clearly visible to the jury, allowing the defense to ask questions concerning the sticks on the girls. 6. Any competent trial lawyer would ask a variety of questions concerning the unusual way that the sticks were placed on the victims, and it would be ineffective for the trial lawyer to not ask questions concerning the sticks placed on the victims. On Saturday, October 25th, 2024, Lieutenant Jerry Holman from the Indiana State Police testified to the following. Yes, they do have court on Saturdays for this case in Indiana because the jury has been bussed from 2 hours away. They picked the jury in a different county. They are sequestered. They are in a hotel without electronics or any outside information, newspapers, things such as like that. And so the court is holding half-day court on Saturdays. I believe this is the day that Ali Mata was in court, and then we did a stream together after her day in court. A, on cross-examination, Lieutenant Holman testified that it was his belief that the sticks branches found on the girls were used by the killer to conceal the bodies. B, on redirect, Prosecutor McLeland asked Lieutenant Holman if another reason that the sticks or branches were found on the girls was something called an undoing. Lieutenant Holman responded, yes. Undoing. Wasn't that a movie? With Nicole Kidman? I don't know. 8, through Dr. Core's testimony, it was determined that it is feasible that multiple people using multiple knives supporting the defense theory that Odinists / Norse paganists were involved in the murders. 9, as Dr. Perlmutter testified to on August 1st of 2024, knives are a classic sign of Odinist / Norse paganism culture, and that knives are classically used in ritualistic killings. 10. Dr. Core's testimony revealed that perhaps as many as 4 knives were used, and at least one of those knives may have been serrated, supporting the defense belief that multiple Norse paganists or Odinists using multiple knives were involved in the murders. 11. Furthermore, upon viewing the crime scene photographs that have been admitted into evidence, there are no obvious drag marks to the naked eye, nor were there any police reports or charts that showed drag marks at the crime scene. Even blood spatter expert Pat Cicero admitted that he could observe no drag marks on the crime scene photographs that he reviewed. 12. The fact that there was no evidence of drag marks support that more than one person was involved in the murders, including 2 or more people needed to lift Liberty German's body, explaining why there were no drag marks from where she was killed to where she was ultimately found, supporting the possibility that multiple Norse paganists / Odinists were present and participating in the murders. It should be pointed out that at autopsy, they were both 5'4", both the girls. Liberty German was 200 pounds. Abby Williams was 100 pounds. 13. As it relates to Lieutenant Holman's testimony, when Lieutenant Holman answered yes when asked if another theory of why the sticks were on the bodies was because of something called an undoing, His testimony is yet another reason provided by the state of Indiana as to why the sticks are on the girls. Caroline is just like, wow. Sarah in shock and horror. Whoever said earlier that this is like the first season of True Detective is spot on. It's eerily similar with every sentence read. 14. The questioning of the prosecution and the answer of Lieutenant Holman pertained to yet another explanation and undoing as to why the sticks were found on the girls, and therefore the prosecution opened the door to the defense's alternative theory as to why the sticks were found on the girls. 15. The defense has its own theory as to why the sticks are on the girls, and Richard Allen has a Sixth Amendment right to provide that theory to rebut the state of Indiana's theories, including the prosecution's latest theory that the sticks are related to an undoing. 16. Additionally, blood spatter expert Pat Cicero opined and/or the prosecution led the jury to believe through questioning that Liberty German was moved to her final resting place to conceal the body. 17. The prosecution's line of questioning of Pat Cicero was pursued by the prosecution on direct examination and opened the door to the defense offering alternative theories as to why the body was placed in its final resting place and why the sticks were placed on the girls. The defense theory is that Liberty German's and Abigail Williams' final resting place was related to Norse paganism / Odinism and a ritualistic killing. 18. Richard Allen has a Sixth Amendment right to present its theory of why the victim's body was placed in its final resting place and why sticks and branches were placed on her body. 19. The defense believes that both Liberty's and Abigail's bodies were placed there because of the desire of Odinists to pose the body and form sticks on the body in an arrangement for reasons only understood by the person or people that murdered the victims. Dr. Perlmutter has testified as to how the sticks would only have meaning to the people who were involved in the murders. 20. Additionally, the defense expert, Dr. Don Perlmutter, indicated in the August 1st, 2024 hearing that the arrangement of sticks was not an undoing, as an undoing is typically an attempt by the killer or killers to provide dignity to the victim. Hallmarks of an undoing might be closing the eyes and mouth of the victims. In this case, the girls' mouths and eyes were open, and one victim was displayed naked in an undignified manner. This would be inconsistent with an undoing. The defense should have the opportunity to explain what it believes is an undoing and how the crime scene does not exhibit an undoing. Yes, Mary. Rick Allen probably feels like he's in Alice in Wonderland at this point. It's crazy. Yeah, you know what? In honor of that, let me switch my background real quick. We're all there with him. Because this just keeps getting curiouser and curiouser. That's why they call me Alice, because I fall into rabbit holes. Joyce came here for credulence. Strains credulity. Strains credulity. Richard Allen has rights, Ducati Curl. Uh-huh. He's not convicted. He's not convicted. Does anybody know what the original bail amount was for him? It was something like $50 million. Does anybody know? I remember hearing it last night. I didn't write it down. But it was an insane amount. I think his wife has lost their home. I mean, this is his life will never be the same after this. And when he went in there for that second interrogation or whatever it was, and he said, you know, it's already been done. Like, you've already done it. Like, you've already talked to all my friends and neighbors and colleagues. Everyone thinks I killed those girls. Claire just realized that she's Alice too. Kathy said, this is a real eye-opener for me. Tanya, please tell me Richard Allen can sue when this is done. I would say there's a pretty strong case. I would say there's a pretty strong case. Oh, that's the other thing that Andrea said yesterday. There's a table somewhere in the courtroom, a table that nobody's been sitting at throughout the trial until yesterday. Until yesterday, when the witnesses from Westville Correctional Facility were testifying, and all of a sudden that table was full of lawyers. It was 20 million, the original bail. Full of lawyers. They are so afraid of being sued. And the treatment that has been exposed of not only Richard Allen, but who knows how many other actually convicted criminals that are in this facility. Glitter Beauties. Why did Elvis in his confession say that Abigail was a pain in the ass? She was the one dating Brian H's son. Could it be he was annoyed in the relationship? Told his dad, and this is what they planned? Reasonable doubt. Hope Hart, this is cruelty in the worst degree. Broken Goth Doll, great point. Says, I doubt it'll live much longer, even if found innocent. Do you think that perhaps they were hoping that he would die during his confinement, during these torturous conditions under which he was held? Or that he may have taken his own life? Do you think they were hoping for that? I don't know. It's a theory. Glitter Beauties, and that's why they said they gave her devil horns with sticks and leaves. Marcus can't decide whether the facts of the case or the judge's actions are more bizarre. 20 million. Bail set, 20 million. What do you need? 10% cash, 2 million? Whatever it was a ridiculous amount that they knew that he would never be able to come up with. Bentley, an army of lawyers appeared. Yep. Table at the back with reserved on it, says Poppet. Yep, the table. Yes, Beth, 20 million. It's not a bail amount, that's a remand until trial. Alternate juror says, this case is so unjust. I thought she's lawyers from the Attorney General's office. Could have been lawyers from different places. You're right. You're correct. Charlene says they should be very afraid. Zelda. Hi, Zelda. John Grisham says it's easy to convict an innocent person. However, it takes practically an act of Congress to get someone free. Heavy Metal Rehab says, I believe they were trying to kill him 100%. Rachel says she's surprised that he didn't die with his heart condition. Jessica is out. For sure they hoped he would not survive. KPT, I do. They thought he'd never make it to trial. Yes, he was, Richard. Yes, Richard. Yes, Richard. Richard Allen was being held at the Supermax at Westville. Yep. For 1 year. 6 months of which was in the hole. The entire time he was under suicide watch in an 8x12 cell, eating his own feces, banging his head against the wall, after which he made some rambling alleged confessions that they are now, I think, talking about today. First time in the history of the state of Indiana that a not yet convicted prisoner has been held at Westville or any state penitentiary, Supermax. Criminal Network says the plan was for him to die in Westville. He was picked for a reason. One of the first people that testified was a woman who I think said she found the tip in a box of stuff in 2022 and was like, oh, this is interesting. Why don't you check this out? And that's when he was called back in and re-interviewed. Did they need some people think maybe they needed a fall guy. I mean, he already had admitted he was there. I don't know. Mary says, of course they wanted him to die or wanted the other inmates to off him. That's why they told everyone in Gen Pop. Oh, that's right. They told everyone in Gen Pop that he was a child killer. That's right. So when he would, I don't think he got out much, but when he did, they would be yelling at him, demeaning him, saying horrific things to him. My StreamYard is, even though I'm on the Ethernet, it says I'm all right. If I disappear, mods, let me know and I'll just come right back on. Thank you, Wendy, for the Cash App. I really, really appreciate you so much. You are very kind. Who doesn't have 2 million lying around, Erica? For duck's sake, Susie. I don't think there's any protesters outside the Carroll County Courthouse for Richard Allen. Chris Watts is treated better, says Myling Cyrus. I like that name, Myling Cyrus. Department of Corrections lawyers is what Andrea said. Yeah, I couldn't remember if she said DOJ or DOC. Maybe both. Maybe both. Because a violation of Richard Allen's civil rights would be a federal case, right? Maybe the DOJ was there too. I don't know. Could be both. Baby Fishmouth says maybe they targeted someone who they knew had mental health challenges. That's even sicker to think. Robert Slack, this type of injustice really scares me when it comes to when Kohberger gets his trial. I see a lot of lazy police similarities. Tinkerbell said, on the tip they found, they said he was cleared. What was the reason they cleared him? What changed? Right. Great point, Glitter Beauties. Thank you. Sometimes, I lose my words and you guys can verbalize things a lot more, but better than I can when my head is spinning. Funny how confessions of Richard Allen on meds and forced to go into mental and forced into going mental, right? Psychotic, heavy duty psychotropic meds, Haldol and other things are good confessions, but the confessions of Elvis F., not under any duress with details about the crime scene not known, is no good, right? And it was his sisters who came forward to give statements to the police about that. And even he gave a statement that said, if I spit on them, would I be in trouble? Back to the document. Evidence introduced before and during trial that supports the introduction of third-party suspects, Elvis Fields and Brad Holder. 21. On Saturday, October 25th, 2024, Lieutenant Holman was asked a question about how many people were involved in the murders of the victims. Lieutenant Holman offered that only one person was involved in the murders. After offering that only one person was involved in the murders, Lieutenant Holman offered the following. As part of his reason for believing that only one person was involved in the murders is that based on his training and experience, when more than one person is involved in a crime, there's often a point in time when one of the participants will discuss the crime or reveal the crime, whereas when it's only one person, it's much easier to contain that secret. That was Lieutenant Holman's theory that supported his belief that only one person committed the murders. That's what he believed. He believed only one person committed the murders because nobody snitched yet. Nobody has snitched, therefore, couldn't possibly be more than one person involved. That's what Indiana State Police Lieutenant Holman, who is the Michael Proctor of this investigation, by the way, the lead investigator on this case, wanted the jury to believe. Only one person committed this because by now, if there was more than one person involved, they would have snitched. 24, since September 18th, 2023, the defense has consistently maintained that evidence supports that Elvis Fields was a participant in the murders, along with Brad Holder and others. According to Lieutenant Holman's theory, as testified under oath on October 25th, 2024, if it is true that Elvis Fields and Brad Holder were both involved in the murders, then it is likely that one of them will have admitted to being involved in the murders or providing incriminating statements concerning being at the murders. Evidence exists that supports the defense contention that multiple people were involved in the murders and also supports Lieutenant Holman's theory that if multiple people are involved in a crime, at least one of them will reveal the crime to others. This is brilliant. Brilliant. They're beating Holman at his own game. For example, blood spatter expert Pat Cicero testified that it's possible that both girls were killed at the same time, which would indicate that more than one person was involved in the crime. Additionally, Pat Cicero also admitted that one explanation for Abby having no blood on her hands is that while her neck was being cut, someone else held her hands down. Law enforcement conducting the investigation into the murders have interviewed one suspect, Elvis Fields, who A, asked inculpating questions to a state trooper, and B, has connections to those who have incriminating evidence on their social media, as well as a direct connection to one of the victims. Therefore, evidence exists that multiple people were involved in the murders, rendering all purported alibis as suspect due to the ability for the ringleader to claim an alibi while others are doing his bidding in terms of abducting the victims. Brad Holder's first alibi, for example, would allow him to be in Delphi no later than 2:30 p.m., perhaps earlier, while Elvis Fields and others abducted the victims and held them, awaiting Holder. In 2018, law enforcement pulled Elvis Fields in for questioning to the Rushville Police Department, and at the end of the interview, took Elvis's DNA and then explained to Elvis their reason for taking his DNA. At the conclusion of the interview, Trooper Kevin Murphy drove Elvis back to his home. After Trooper Murphy dropped Elvis off at his home, Elvis's home, Elvis walked towards his home, then turned around and approached Kevin Murphy's car. After getting close to Trooper Murphy's vehicle, Elvis asked Trooper Murphy, "If my spit is found on one of the girls, but I have an explanation for it, would I still be in trouble?" 35. DNA analyst Stacy Bozanovsky testified at the end of her cross-examination on October 28th, 2024, that a person's spit can be analyzed for DNA. 36. Additionally, evidence exists that supports that Elvis Fields was mimicking Brad Holders, who lived 125 plus miles away and should have no ties to Elvis Fields, Facebook posts, or that Brad Holder was mimicking Elvis Fields' Facebook posts months before the victims were abducted. Elvis Fields has claimed under oath that Brad Holder was actually mimicking Facebook posts that Elvis Fields had posted. Brad Holder's son Logan was dating Abby Williams, and Brad Holder had evidence that exhibited Holder's knowledge of a crime scene on his social media that no one else should know. Meanwhile, 125 miles away, Elvis Fields, who seemingly would have no reason to know Brad Holder even existed, A, followed Brad Holder on Facebook, mimicking his posts, or vice versa, and B, was making statements that inculpate him as to being involved in the murders, including the expectation of the possibility that Elvis's spit might be found on the girls. However, this would not be surprising based upon Lieutenant Holman's October 26, 2024 testimony that when multiple people are involved in a crime, someone will ultimately reveal the crime. Additionally, evidence from Brad Holder's social media supported the concept that others assisted him in committing the murders and moving the bodies, as Holder posted a meme on his Facebook page a few days after the girls were murdered. And the theme and words from that meme have become more important due to testimony that has been elicited during the trial. According to blood spatter expert Pat Cicero, Libby German's 200-pound body was in fact moved from one location to another. Also, pursuant to blood spatter expert Pat Cicero, there were no drag marks that could be seen on the crime photos. Therefore, evidence supports that Libby's body was moved from one location to another and that two or more people would have been needed to carry the body since no drag marks existed. Certainly, it would be highly unlikely that one man alone could accomplish that task. On February 17th of 2017, 3 days after the murders, Brad Holder posted these words on his Facebook page. "You real ones don't judge you or ask a bunch of questions. They help you move the body and never speak of it again." The fact that Brad Holder had content on his social media that mimics the crime scene unknown to the public at that time, and additionally that he posted words concerning how real friends would help him move a body, supports the theory that Brad Holder and others were involved in the murders. The fact that Brad Holder has told multiple stories about whether he had ever met Abby Williams, ranging from he never met her to he met her one time to he met her 2 times, along with all the other evidence provided in the Franks memo, supports that third-party suspect evidence should be made admissible. Additionally, the evidence previously provided to this court in the Franks memo, as well as admitted into evidence on August 1st of 2024, provided proof that Elvis Fields did not have an alibi that could be substantiated, but quite the opposite. Elvis Fields' alibi is sketchy, as his version of his whereabouts on February 13th of 2017 runs counter to those who allegedly were with him that day. In other words, nobody could keep their story straight about Elvis's whereabouts on February 13th of 2017. Lieutenant Holman's October 26, 2024 testimony leaves the jury under the mistaken belief that no evidence exists that multiple persons were involved in the murders and that no other suspects have made any statements that inculpates them in the crimes, thus supporting Lieutenant Holman's theory that when multiple people are involved in a crime, at least one of them will ultimately reveal the crime. I mean, that's a great argument. Holman's testimony leaves the jury under the mistaken belief that nobody confessed to this crime. And Fields did more than once. At the time of his October 26, 2024 testimony, Lieutenant Holman was fully aware that evidence existed that Elvis Field made inculpatory statements concerning being present at the scene and at the time that the victims were murdered. At the time of his October 26, 2024 testimony, Lieutenant Holman was fully aware that evidence existed that Elvis Fields of Rushville, Indiana, had a connection with Brad Holder from Logansport, Indiana, and in fact said that evidence produced from the law enforcement investigation showed that Brad Holder and Elvis Fields were mimicking one another on Facebook. At the time of his October 26, 2024 testimony, Lieutenant Holman was fully aware that evidence existed that Brad Holder's son Logan dated Abby Williams. At the time of his October 26, 2024 testimony, Lieutenant Holman was fully aware that Brad Holder had evidence on his social media consistent with signatures left behind at the crime scene, including a mimicked crime scene photograph that looked eerily similar to the way the bodies were posed on the ground of the woods, and photographs of sticks laid down on the ground, and a similar pattern of sticks found on Abby's body in the form of a hand-drawn pattern on the wrist of Brad Holder, among other incriminating items, including a post about real friends helping move bodies. Thanks, JM. For those just joining, this is a motion filed this morning by the defense. It's their second motion filed since last Wednesday to introduce third-party culprit and NORSE paganism or Odinism evidence at trial based on the testimony, this time, of Holman. Holman's testimony was after the last motion was filed. At the time of his testimony, Lieutenant Holman was aware that Odinists/Norse paganists had been investigated as being involved in the murders. Time of his testimony, Lieutenant Holman was aware that both Brad Holder and Elvis Fields possessed knives and that Brad Holder used knives as part of his Odinism religion. At the time of his testimony, Lieutenant Holman was aware, or should have been aware, that Brad Holder possessed a .40 caliber handgun. At the time of his testimony, Lieutenant Holman was aware, or should have been aware, that Brad Holder's .40 caliber handgun was never collected, test fired, or compared to the bullet allegedly found at the crime scene. I'm breaking from the document for a second to say that I'm not a gun person. I'm not a ballistics expert. Does anybody know whether the unspent cartridge that was ejected, or maybe there's another word for it, allegedly, from what they think is Richard Allen's gun, would be the same type of ammunition that would be used in a 40 caliber handgun? Was it a 40 caliber? I don't know. I'm not a gun person, so you tell me. Therefore, the jury has been misled into believing that law enforcement's only available evidence only supports that only one person was involved in the crime when it was cycled through the gun. Thank you, Lilica. Same caliber, Bentley. Thank you. Thank you, Kimberly. This is a no. No, it's not the same bullet, or no, that's not. It cannot be. Cartridge was a 40 caliber. Lieutenant Holman makes Elvis Fields look like a rocket scientist, says Criminal Network. Yes, thank you. KLF. Several guns could not be excluded. They had to fire it to make it match. Right. I do remember. I remember that part. Oh, thank you. You have a picture of Elvis Fields. Thank you, New Hampshire woman. I love you guys so much. I don't know why I had the impression that Elvis Fields was a young guy. That's Elvis Fields. Thanks, New Hampshire woman. I don't know why I had in my head that he was a young guy. I don't know why, but he doesn't seem like he's a young guy. I mean, it's hard to tell how old he is. Thank you. That's Elvis Fields, folks. Okay, so Holder's 40 caliber handgun was never collected, test fired, or compared to anything. You go there. Therefore, the jury's been misled into believing that law enforcement's only available evidence only supports that only one person was involved in the crime. When Holman's own words on the stand, evidence from law enforcement investigation and trial testimony from Dr. Kaur, Pat Cicero, and Holman would support the defense theory that multiple people were involved in the crimes. This is true because Elvis Fields has provided inculpatory statements and has had a social media connection with Brad Holder, and Holman has indicated that when multiple people are involved in a crime, it's his experience that one of the participants will ultimately reveal the secret of the crime. This is such a great argument. I just love it. I love legal arguments that are just masterful, using Holman's own testimony against him. He opened the door. He opened the door. He did. He opened the door. If the judge doesn't grant this motion, then I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to tell you. I just don't even, I mean, it would be embarrassing. It's just, how could she not? It is also true because a substantial amount of evidence supports that Brad Holder's social media contained words and images that are consistent with the crime scene and also consistent with creating or showcasing an alibi. At 2 a.m. on February 14th, 2017, when for the only time in his life he claimed in a Facebook post that he was at the gym, as Holder stated under oath and deposition. Holder's social media is also consistent with others being involved and assisting him in moving the bodies. Richard Allen possesses a Sixth Amendment right to rebut Lieutenant Holman's theory that one man and only one man was involved in these murders. especially when Lieutenant Holman's reasoning for believing that only one man was involved in the murders is debunked by the evidence detailed herein, including Elvis Fields' inculpatory statement that supports Lieutenant Holman's belief that when multiple people are involved in a crime, ultimately one person will reveal the commission of the crime. Additionally, as previously detailed, Richard Allen possesses a Sixth Amendment right to present evidence that those involved in Norse paganism/Odinism were involved in the murders and posed the girls and placed the sticks on the girls in certain arrangements for reasons that are very personal to the people that committed the crimes. Defendant files this motion currently in part for purposes of a ruling in anticipation of the need to contact our witnesses if the court reverses its ruling. XOXO. Andrew Baldwin, Bradley Rosie, Jennifer, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, Auger. XOXO, please, fingers crossed. Needless to say, there's been no ruling on the motion from last week. Physics says, police are afraid of Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall, much easier for them to push around an emotionally vulnerable short guy. Does Elvis look like the second sketch? He looks older to me than the second sketch. You guys share the stream out so that people can, let's take a look. People can get the information that this is hot off the press, if you don't mind. I don't do Twitter, so I don't know if you're in any Facebook groups or anything like that, Reddit threads, I don't know. Okay, this is Elvis, right? And this is number 2. I mean, he looks a lot younger, but what say you? If this is genuinely the correct Elvis Fields. Like, this guy looks too old. Like, I had the impression that he was a young guy that wanted to be part of this gang. So if somebody has a younger Elvis Fields, maybe the stress of knowing what happened aged him. Like, I don't know the date of this. Jessica, fanbase at mlittlelaw.com. So I don't, I can't. I mean, this guy to me, this second sketch looks to me like to be a guy who's like 20. But that's just my opinion. So we need to focus, for the purposes of this motion that was filed today, Elvis Fields and Brad Holder. That's who they want to bring in information about. What say you? Do you think the judge is going to grant it? I mean, are we looking for a fair trial here, or were we looking for a conviction? Ken Weber, thank you. I addressed this earlier. Thank you so much for the 20. Baby foul mouth. Holder could have clocked in and then picked up outside of work. His alibi's mushy. Yep. I agree. I mean, how powerful is this Vinlander group? I don't know. We looked into it a little bit in the beginning of the stream. Wendy, could they ask the bloody and muddy girl to look at that picture of Holder? She talked a lot about hats and a man with brown eyes on the stand. Well, if they call her back, I suppose they could. I don't know if she testified as to, I'm not totally up on her testimony. Was she the one who got a little, was that Carbob? Was she the one who got a little testy on the stand? I think she did, right? Sketches can't even be accurate. Look at Logan Holder's pictures. Boop. Sketch number 1. And I guess this is Logan. I guess this is his dad. She was testy, right? All right, so there's Logan. That's the bridge guy sketch. Sketch number 2. There's a lot of reasonable doubt. In my opinion, the jury should be able to hear about this stuff, but based on the prior rulings of this judge, I really don't even know what to think or what she's going to do. And that's why I guess we have different sketches. It makes sense if there was 3 of them involved, and that's why people were seeing them at different times, I guess. Yep. I need everybody, if you wouldn't mind, to smash the like button because there's 1,500 of you here, only 1,000 likes. We can do better. We can do better. I know we can. We can do it. We can do it. Oh my, those photos, says Deb. We don't know that's the real Elvis. There's no way that's him. I don't know. Somebody sent it to me and said this was from his Facebook. Laura says Brad Holder initiated him into Freemasonry. The prosecutor McClelland is also a Freemason. They take an oath to protect their brothers by all means. Nancy says, there you go, side by side. Both sketches match father and son. Okay, so that picture may be Elvis's father is also named Elvis. Okay. But the sketches are definitely of Richard Allen. You think both of the sketches are Richard Allen? GB3? I mean, in my opinion, they look like completely different people with about a 30 or 20-year age gap. My opinion. But it's not up to me. It's up to a jury. Letteros by Betterow. Hello, I want to hear all about the confessions today. They watched in court. Hope the jury sees the differences between Richard Allen then and Richard Allen now and how they broke them down. Well, they watched video yesterday of the interrogations. I don't know if they have video confessions or if they're audio tapes. But let's see. If anybody's had an opportunity to say anything yet that I can tell you about. From Bob Mata, 7 hours ago, we are nearing the end of the state's case in chief today, as today will be the second day of confessions. Indiana State Police Harshman, who listened to all of the recorded calls between Richard Allen and his wife, Kathy, and mother. It'll be very interesting to see if you can hear the psychosis in Allen's voice. Dr. Walla, Allen's prison psychologist, may also testify if she shows up. Stay tuned. That was 7 hours ago. And then 5 hours ago, Defense Diaries posted, Dr. Monica Walla is currently on the stand on direct. She is testifying regarding multiple confessions made to her by Richard Allen. Most notably, the confession made on May 3rd, 2023, wherein he gave a narrative description of his activities in the day of the murders. Wallace stated that Rick stated that he went to see his parents. Then they were going to eat lunch and he wasn't interested. He said he picked up a 6-pack of beer and drank 3, then drank the other 3 later. Went home, bundled up, and went to the bridge. Followed the girls. Stated that he did something with gun, and that's when he must have dropped round. He said he was intending on essaying the girls, but a van startled him and he killed the girls, covered the bodies with sticks, and went back to his car. Lived his life. And then this was 3 hours ago. The Walla Direct lasted until 11:45 a.m. We are about 30 minutes into Rosie's cross-examination of Walla when lunch was called. He's well prepared for this examination. She very much toes the party line for state during direct, which always makes for interesting crosses. Was he fed any information during the time that he was in solitary about the sticks? Is a man with no prior criminal record? I don't know. Let's see if Andrea has anything to say so far. Nothing yet today, but yesterday she said, "Today has been a turning point for me in the fight to reveal to the world what horror is unfolding in the Carroll County Circuit Court in the trial of Richard Allen. I have never been more convinced of how important it is for this case to be seen and witnessed. There is legal work I need to finish, so I might be absent here for a bit while I work on taking the fight for transparency to the next level." She was on the air last night for about 5 or 6 hours. I would recommend you go watch her tonight. Tell her I sent you. Tell her I said hi. Thank you for the going through the motions live that just concluded. I will go check that out. I didn't know Sean was going live today. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, right. They better get Rick for murdering his wife too, because he confessed to that as well, didn't he? And she is still very much alive. So, there's that. It'll be very interesting to see what the judge does with this motion, especially if the state's supposed to wrap up their case today, which means the defense case would start tomorrow, which means they need a ruling on this motion, like toot sweet. Heavy Metal Rehab says, "I count on YouTubers for my news. I quit watching a mainstream media a while ago." Thank you, Precocent. I DM'd you on Insta additional sketches. I just can't pull it up right now on my Insta. You gotta email to me. Those Insta messages get lost in a black hole. Fanbase@mlittlelaw.com. Where was Elvis from again? Thoughts about a state. He was about 125 miles away. In I can't remember the exact name of the town. If anybody knows, just toss it in the chat. A. Gutierrez says Monica Walla has been active on discussion groups and forums. Yes, he also confessed to killing his non-existent grandchildren and also about essaying his fictional grandchildren. Yep. Yep. If they weren't shot, what were they? Oh, their throats were slit. And they were bled out. There was some bloodletting perhaps involved, and there was not a lot of blood at the scene. Amy says, "I trust YouTubers more than the news any day." I'm just reading legal documents to you folks, so that's what I'm talking about today. Angela Burke. Richard Allen is repeating what he was told during his interrogations. Then he was locked up, drugged. No wonder he was repeating during his psychotic breakdowns. Rushville. Thank you, Rushville. That's where Elvis is from. Okay, thank you. Photo you have is, in fact, the correct Elvis Fields. Here's an additional sketch from the investigation that was unreleased. Many people believe this sketch resembles Elvis Fields or Levi Holder. I don't know if I should put it up if it's not been released. I don't want to get in trouble by the judge for, releasing information that was not public, because you know what she did to those attorneys. She took Richard Allen's attorneys off his case because somebody got a hold of the crime scene photos off the conference table at the defense attorney's office. JD Lyons says, seeing how angry people are who covered this tells me everything I need to know. Elvis has not left the building, Chief. Nope. Nope. Thank you, Percosin. Well, are you saying that? Hunting evil true crime. All the pictures there. All right. Well, if this has already been public, then I guess I'll be all right. I'll be all right. All right. Here's another sketch. Huh. Interesting. Life Artist says, this case seems like an absolute dumpster fire. Yep. Yes, little cupcake, but an unused bullet was found matching somebody's gun type. Yeah, they're saying that it may have been cycled through. I don't really know the exact terminology. Sean McDonough spilling all the tea today. Okay, thank you, Percocent. It has now been released. It simply was not released before the arrest of Richard Allen. Got it. Got it. So you're saying this is okay. So this is the sketch, right? And I gotta find that picture again of Elvis Fields that you say is the accurate. Oh, here's another picture of Elvis Fields. Okay. Okay, got it. Check this out. Sketch. Let me just move this. Elvis. Sketch. Elvis. What would you say? What would you say? What would you say? Yep. Name that tune. Resembles that picture you showed earlier more, though. All right, we'll get that back. You guys are so freaking collaborative. I just love you. Precascent. KLF sent that one in. And then we're sent in the sketch is some other sketches. And then okay, this was from October 2022. This was the original one that was sent in by, I don't know if you guys want credit or not, Donna. October of 2022. So this was 5 years post, a little more than almost 6 years after. That was around the time that Richard Allen was arrested. Come on, man. I mean, what say you? Thing is, jury may never see this stuff. KLF said these are sketches that Bob and Allie showed. This was the one on the left-hand side that was released in 2017, shortly after the incident. This was the one that was released, I think, in 2019, number 2. And then as far as number 3 and number 4 go, I don't know when those came out. It looks to me like it could be 4 different people, right? Percosin said there's some real cracked out looking photos of Elvis somewhere. Glitter Beauty is such a shame because now it makes sense why we have so many different sketches. Because it may have been more than one person involved when which we all know what eldest confessed to his sister. Just a friend. You say he's just a friend. Thanks for the 2. Sketch artist did a pretty good job. Agreed. CC 5. I fear that this case, as well as the Reed case, are more consistent with what actually happens in our legal system. Carelessness, arrogance, not all the time. It's rare, but it happens. Thank you so much, Gen X Jennifer. I sent you sketch comparisons. It's Logan Holder. We'll see. We'll see what the judge does with this. I don't know if I'm very hopeful. Are you? Same eyes on 2 and 3. Yeah, could be. Oh, baby, you got what I need. You say he's just a friend. Name that artist and you say he's just, oh, baby, you got what I need. All right, you guys, you got to help me. I'm in a competition that Vinnie Politan doesn't know about to beat him in subscriber count. I'm at almost 71,000. He's at 81,000. We need to beat Vinny. Please just hit the subscribe button. It's free. Bismarcky, RIP. You know KLF. That is Bismarcky. Sandra says, definitely can't say who they look like, but I can say they don't look like Rick Allen. Wonder if Abby had arranged to meet Logan that day. Well, we didn't even get into the Kagan Klein stuff and his sock puppet account and the fact that he may have been involved in catfishing one of the girls, and he's currently sitting in jail, I believe, for or prison for multiple counts of CSAM. Yes, Kagan Klein. Haven't even gotten to that yet, but if you guys want to continue with this again, I'm here for it. R.I.P. Biz, the legend, JD. Kim, same nose. Second and third sketch, totally Kagan Klein in 2017. See how much reasonable doubt there is? I mean, do you see? Everyone's got a different opinion. I am the coolest mom. I've been voted coolest mom for many, many years. I have 5. I have 5 kids, ranging from full-grown adults to teenagers, and I've been voted cool mom among many generations. Coolest mom, and that is cool. Long Island represent, KLF. Thank you. Very vivid memories with that song, Ann Bonner. Don't we all, right? No, don't drop any. I'm just saying, just hit the bell on mine. Shantae's Inferno. If Kagan Klein wasn't there, I think he definitely gave them the location of the girls. They got catfished. They were thinking they were meeting Anthony Schatz. I'm convinced Kagan Klein took a plea. Right. Tiffany, if it was some sort of ritual, it was not a crime of opportunity, and the girls were lured out there, but the police didn't find any evidence of that on the phone. No matter what, it doesn't add up. Whose phone? They never extracted. Abby's the one who didn't have a phone, but they never extracted Abby's tablet. Right? And I don't think they were able to access Rick Allen's phone up from all the way back in 2017, because by the time they arrested him, it was almost 6 years later. And I ask you, do you have any idea where your phone from 6 years ago is? I don't. No idea. I have some phones that I would throw in a drawer. They had to pry my BlackBerry from my cold, nearly dead hands to make me get rid of my BlackBerry. So I saved that as a prop, let's say. I have no idea where the rest of my phones are. Sometimes I traded them in. Sometimes I mailed them in a box and got $100 off my phone. I have no idea where my phone from 6 years ago was. Do you? That I don't know. Probably traded back into Google. Who knows? From 2017. Like, I barely know what day it is today, Bentley. Kagan Klein also ditched at least one of his burner phones. So did Richard Allen, when people get rid of phones, you know why? Richard Allen ditched a phone? A burner? I don't know. That I don't know. Damn it, do not talk about BlackBerry. My favorite font, mine too. Mine too. I just love that little keyboard. I just loved it. I could, with fingernails, you could type, you could type with your two fingers. I loved my BlackBerry. Then they made another one that was like digital. It had a digital keyboard. It wasn't as good, but it was still something. I loved my BlackBerry. I still have my Palm Pilot too. That I definitely have somewhere. I don't know if I have the cord to plug it in, but I still have a Palm Pilot somewhere. Thank you, Ann Smith. There's so much going on. I don't know how Melanie was able to absorb as much of this case as she hasn't so quickly. I don't know. I just, read the documents and then I absorb them and then I do a lot of research. Ann, thank you for noticing. I do a lot of research. I listened to a lot of the testimony. I read a lot of articles about what's been going on in court, about what's happened in the past. And thank you for noticing, because these shows do take a lot of research. No abstraction of Abby's phone. It could have been a secret meeting that the girls were going to, but she didn't have a phone, right, Angela? She only had a tablet. Yes. They asked Richard Allen where he parked 5 years later. I forgot where I parked in the big lot at my apartment building after 2 days. You ever see the Seinfeld episode where they go to the mall and they can't find the car and they're walking all around and Kramer's carrying that big giant television? And then I think he gets he gets busted for because he goes to take a leak in the hallway of the parking garage of the mall, and he gets a ticket for indecent exposure. Look, people, Melanie's 10,000 behind Vinny. Her content is 1,000 times better. Hit that subscriber button. Thank you, JB3. Thank you. Oh, she Crime Addict has her phone, because you know how important it is. Yep, Ann's got her BlackBerry. Motorola flip phone. I probably have one of those somewhere. Precocin, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but I'm sure you're not going to hold it against me. The Anthony Schatz account was linked to another incident on February 20 of 17, which was 6 days later, where a girl saw a man in a ski mask looking into her window. Kagan Klein actually knew her and was just playing, but someone else had access. Okay. Gen X Jennifer prefers a rotary landline because it's easier to ghost people. Right? All right. Thank the mods, you guys. I have the best mods on YouTube. They are amazing. Absolutely amazing. And they keep the chat classy and try and keep it cool in here so that everyone can talk about their opinions in a respectful manner. And we try and keep it clean because people like to listen at work or with their kids in the room with their headphones off. Thanks, Gen X Jennifer. I think I thanked you, but I'm going to thank you again. NCC, Just a Friend, Precocent, Helene, and Wendy DeB. You guys are amazing, amazingly kind and generous. And I love you all so very much. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to be doing, hopefully this is going to go ahead. It's been adjourned 3 or 4 times. But tomorrow I'm going to have Carly Gregg's grandfather on with me, with Bridget Todd, Carly Gregg's attorney. I am going to shut the chat off because it is going to be a very vitriolic chat. There are a lot of people who really do not want to hear anything about Carly Gregg going to prison for life without parole at the age of 14. And in order to protect my guests, I need to keep the chat off. If you would like to submit questions in advance, please submit them to this email address. I read all emails. I cannot respond to them. I cannot be your pen pal. I cannot pick up your child in California and bring him to you in Brazil and pay for his plane ticket, even if you say that you're going to give me 10 acres of land. Yes, that really actually happened. And but by all means, I do read all emails, and I thank you for your tips and tricks and all of your thoughts and concerns. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to eject you when I hit end on this stream. It is going to just send you over to tomorrow's stream so that if you would like to watch it, it's going to be at 10 a.m. If you'd like to come and listen to what Carly Gregg's grandfather has to say. Remember, he is also the father of Ashley Smiley, who was killed by Carly Gregg. And so he's been standing by Carly Gregg throughout the trial and then some. And there are so many of you who have made donations to the appeal fund, and he would like to come and thank you personally. And I hope that you can come and show the family a little bit of grace. I'm sorry. Yes, Ashley's dad. Did I say Ashley's mom? I don't even know what I said. Ashley's dad, Carly's grandpa. He wrote you a note, Rachel. Very, very kind. It does speak volumes. He's going to be able to, I'm going to let him talk about whatever he wants to talk about with regard to Ashley's childhood, Ashley's mental illnesses that she may or may not have had, a lot of stuff the judge would not let in. So thank you again to all of you for watching. I love you all with all of my heart. Stay cool, stay kind, stay classy. You guys are the best chat on the internet. And peace. Hit the bell. I'll see you real soon. Maybe later. Maybe some Karen Reed stuff broke. We'll see. I'm always willing to go live at a moment's notice, so we cannot forget Carly. Thank you. See you guys tomorrow at the latest, maybe later at the earliest. Vote.